Chapter 2171. Yu Jiao hesitated. If I let go of this opportunity, once Meng Wuya and the others leave, Chu Yang and the others will slip away again. Yu Jiao really didn't know when there would be such a good opportunity to annihilate the enemy again. Yu Jiao thought about it, and was actually a little hesitant. Not only was Yu Jiao hesitant, Chu Yang was also a little hesitant looking at the lineup over there. Although the people on Yu Jiao's side were a bunch of injured soldiers, each of their real combat power was still not to be underestimated. Especially those who could survive the destruction of wind and thunder, it proved that each of them was not ordinary. The weakest among them was almost at the same level as Bai Yu Chen. Even if there was a slight gap, it was definitely not far off. On his side, only he and Tan Tan, and the divine spirit of the calamity could support. As for Meng Wuya's side, there was no one who could be used. There were also the two great elders of the demon clan. These two elders were in an awkward position. It was really inconvenient to confront Mo Yuntian head-on. It was hard to count on them. Once the war started, the other side would definitely not have it easy, but his side would also suffer heavy casualties. Forcing a war was really not a good idea. For a moment, Chu Yang was also a little hesitant about what to do. For a long time, the two were speechless. Deputy Commander Yu, since everyone cherishes their feathers, why don't I make a proposal to solve the current deadlock? What do you think? Chu Yang thought for a long time and finally made up his mind. Yu Jiao frowned and said, "What do you mean? Previously, Deputy Commander Yu said that you want to have a fair fight with me. These words still linger in my ears." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Since that's the case, why don't you and I have a fair fight? How about we settle this grudge once and for all?" Yu Jiao stared at Chu Yang in disbelief. "You and I? A fair fight? One-on-one?" He thought, "How is this a fair fight? It's you who is looking for death, right? I have never seen someone who is so unafraid of death. If you say that the divine spirit of the calamity will fight one-on-one with me, I may be a little afraid. You fight. Let me fight. If I lose this battle, I will take my people and leave. I will never interfere with your Mo Yuntian quelling the internal strife. I don't care whether Meng Wuya is dead or alive. As for whether you still want to chase us after you deal with the internal strife, it's your choice. We'll just have to deal with whatever comes our way." Chu Yang said lightly, "But if I win this battle in the end, I will take away General Meng and his subordinates. You're not allowed to pursue him." Yu Kai laughed heartily. "Since Villa Master Chu is so heroic, how can I have any doubts? I will make this bet with Villa Master Chu. If I lose, I will immediately bring my men back to Ink Cloud Sky." How could he still have the face to mention the matter of being hunted down? Of course, if I am lucky enough to win in the end, if Mana Master Chu is able to survive, you can still leave with your people. However, if you are unfortunate enough to perish, don't blame me for being merciless. I'm sure Mana Master Chu understands the logic of not giving in and not showing mercy. Thinking about it for a long time, this was simply a great deal that was guaranteed to win and not lose. It was simply no worse than a pie falling from the sky. He was at the peak of the saint level. Wouldn't it be a piece of cake for him to deal with Chu Yang, who was at the peak of the celestial level? How could there be any luck? Yu Kai wasn't the only one who thought this way. Even his subordinates and the Dreamslayer army had the same thought. Had Chu Yang gone mad? Some people even thought, could it be that Chu Yang was just putting on a show? Would he just admit defeat and run away after exchanging a few moves? Otherwise, how could he challenge a saint with his current celestial being peak stage? Even if Uncle Ma and Uncle Hu were peak stage saints, were to challenge Yu Kai one-on-one, even if they weren't instantly killed, they would definitely have no chance of winning. With Chu Yang's pitiful celestial being peak stage cultivation, it was really not enough. At this moment, the wind and clouds in the sky were turbulent. Suddenly, a majestic voice said, "The bet is established. A fair battle. I accept the arbitration of this battle." It was the people from the Demon Emperor's Heavenly Oath Division who were affected by the agreement between the two. This battle had already been recognized by heaven and earth. Everyone from both sides looked solemn. That's right, since this battle is a one-on-one battle between Villa Master Chu and me, then the divine spirit of the calamity cannot interfere in this battle. Yu Kai suddenly thought of the divine spirit of the calamity and hurriedly added another condition. Marshal Yu, since it's a one-on-one battle between you and me, what does it have to do with the divine spirit of the calamity? The divine spirit of the calamity's name is not Chu Yang, and it wouldn't be so coincidental as to be called Yu Kai, right? Chu Yang laughed loudly. Yu Kai finally couldn't help but blush. It felt like he was gauging the stature of a great ruler with the yardstick of a villain. In just a few words, the way to end this three-way deathmatch was decided. Even the others didn't have time to say anything to dissuade him. The people on Late Rain's side were sure that no one would dissuade Chu Yang. It was rare that Chu Yang would be so stupid as to take the initiative to court death. Naturally, they were happy to see such a brainless decision. They were just short of raising their hands to encourage him. But the people on Meng Wu Ya's side all had unconcealable worry on their faces. They had all fought with Chu Yang before. Chu Yang's cultivation was not bad. In terms of his age, both his cultivation and progress were extremely commendable. It was definitely a miracle for him to be at the peak of the celestial being level when they first fought. But he was still far behind Yu Kai. The soldiers of the Dreamslayer army were very sure that as long as Chu Yang was given some more time, perhaps 3 or 5 years, he would definitely surpass Yu Kai. But now, the gap between the two was still quite huge. There was a fundamental gap. To give a simple example, in the previous battle in the Black Hole, Chu Yang's performance was exceptionally outstanding. He was worthy of his name, a true stabilizing force. The results he obtained were also obvious to all. But this achievement was still within the scope of the celestial being level. If the person involved was Yu Kai, the Dreamslayer army would be hunted down. This was the fundamental difference between the sage level and those below it. Especially when Yu Kai was still at the sage level. So, Chu Yang's action of challenging Yu Kai alone was definitely a foolish act of seeking death. In addition to seeking death, he also wanted to completely destroy the Dreamslayer army's chances of survival. But the Dreamslayer army did not blame Chu Yang at all. If it were not for Chu Yang, they, including General Meng, would have been wiped out long ago. Now, Chu Yang even gambled his own life for the sake of their survival. In fact, even if Chu Yang had found an excuse to take his people away, no one would have blamed him. In terms of standpoints, the two sides were enemies. Even until now, this hostile relationship hadn't changed in the slightest. So, it was natural for Chu Yang to watch with folded arms. It was understandable. But the current situation was that not only did Chu Yang not leave, but he also wanted to have a decisive battle with Yu Kai for their survival. More importantly, the gap between the real cultivation of the two sides could only be described as the gap between heaven and earth. It could be said that Chu Yang had risked his life in order to save them. How could they not be moved by this reality? Then, he thought about how he and the others had chased after Chu Yang and the others for more than 100,000 miles under the leadership of Meng Wu Ya. Then, he thought about how Chu Yang had risked his life to save him and the others for the sake of justice in Jianghu. Righteous as the clouds, nothing more than this. Every soldier of the Dreamslayer army who was still alive could not help but feel a surge of emotions. One of the Dreamslayer army officers suddenly shouted, "Villa Master Chu, we appreciate your kindness. But we are all enemies, and our standpoints are different. You really don't have to make such a sacrifice for us. Villa Master Chu, please take your brothers and leave. If there is a next life, we will definitely be friends with Villa Master Chu." A few people shouted in unison, "Villa Master Chu, please leave quickly. If there is a next life, we will be friends again." Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, "There's no need to wait until the next life to talk about friendship. To be honest, I approve of this duel. I also want to use Deputy Commander Yu to verify how far my cultivation has progressed. It's not entirely for the sake of you. So, you don't have to worry too much." Everyone in the Dreamslayer army heard this and felt an indescribable warmth in their hearts. Chu Yang had clearly said this because he didn't want them to have more psychological burdens. So, he had taken everything on himself. But, the more he said this, the more everyone acknowledged him in their hearts. Yu Jie smiled gloomily and said, Mana Master Chu, what a brilliant method of roping them in. It's a pity that time is not on our side. Otherwise, I'm afraid that these defeated soldiers would have surrendered to Mana Master Chu and die for you. An officer of the Dream Slayer army laughed in disdain. Yuchi, you despicable man. It's hard to judge a king's heart with your petty heart. We're happy to be roped in. What can you do about it? If it were you, we wouldn't even look at you. The Dream Slayer army roared with laughter and said, that's right. Who does Yu Kai think he is? How can we accept such a person's roping? Do you think that Villa Master Chu is playing tricks? But we are happy to be fooled. Money can't buy our happiness. What can you do about it? Yu Kai was so angry that his mouth was crooked and his eyes were slanted. He said, a group of deceitful and ignorant traitors. I will take good care of you later. Chu Yang said calmly, Deputy Commander Yu, the outcome has not been decided yet. Is showing off your ability to sit in a high position? Come, let me see how you can sit in the position of Deputy Commander Mo Yuntian with your true ability. Chapter 2172. At this moment, Tan Tan shouted, Ichi. Chu Yang heard this and glared at him. Tan Tan hurriedly changed his words, Senior Marshal Brother, I want to discuss something with you. Do you want me to fight with him? I will make him feel great. I will make him explode. I will make him feel satisfied. Chu Yang was speechless. Why does this guy speak so ambiguously? Can't he care about his identity a little? He wasn't afraid of losing face. So, he said hatefully, quickly go away. You'd better die as far as you can go. Tan Tan shrunk his neck and laughed dryly. He was speechless for a long time. But, he couldn't help but say, then, you must work harder. Make Vice Commander you feel good. Maybe Vice Marshal you will come looking for you every day to do it. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and was speechless for a long time. Why would a desperate life and death battle become so obscene and erotic when it comes out of Tan Tan's mouth? Talent. A genius. A demon. Yu Kai was so angry that his face turned pale. He pointed at Tan Tan with a trembling finger, you ugly bastard. Wait until I deal with Chu Yang. I will let you know what it means to feel good. Oh, I am so scared. Tan Tan screamed. He suddenly covered his buttocks with his hands. He pinched his nose and twisted his buttocks. He said to Yu Kai shyly, oh, you are so bad. So bad. So bad. So bad. Everyone from both sides, without exception, collectively felt a layer of goosebumps rise on their bodies. Chu Yang's body floated out like a cloud. He rushed to the top of a mountain and shouted, Yu Kai, quickly come up to meet your death. Hurry up and leave this place. Otherwise, if I continue to listen to Tan Tan talk like this, I may die of disgust before Yu Kai hits. Yu Kai's face was filled with black lines as he quickly flew up and chased after Chu Yang. This ugly bastard's mouth is comparable to 100,000 soldiers. I can't listen anymore. If I listen any longer, I will be so angry that I will bleed from my 7 orifices and die of anger. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the two figures flew far away like shooting stars. The two of them said in unison, before the battle is over, none of you are allowed to attack. Therefore, the 3 sides confronted each other. Everyone was trying to heal their injuries. The Dream Slayer army gathered around Meng Wu Ya and carefully treated his injuries. When they saw Meng Wu Ya's bloody and unconscious body, they all had tears in their eyes. Occasionally, when they raised their heads and saw the enemy, their eyes would be filled with hatred. This was the case for all 3 parties. But, no one dared to act blindly without thinking before Chu Yang and Yu returned. Yu Kai's army was naturally full of confidence in Deputy Commander Yu's cultivation. But, they didn't know that Chu Yang's people were also full of confidence in Chu Yang. All was silent as they waited for the final result. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion in the distance, and then a sword light flashed, and another sword light soared into the sky like a dragon. At this moment, the blue sky lost its color. The battle at the pinnacle between the two of them had clearly begun with this rumble. This was Chu Yang's first time facing a saint-level expert head-on since his debut. In Chu Yang's battle history, This battle would be recorded in the annals of history. Like a thunderclap, the two magnificent sword lights collided in the sky. In an instant, they shattered into a sky full of stars, scattering in all directions. Then, a whistling sound rang out. On the opposite mountain, a silver light suddenly shone. Between heaven and earth, it actually turned bright silver in that instant. It was already afternoon. There was no wind and the sky was a little dark. But, it was still considered bright. But, the two whistling sword lights scraped the entire forest neatly. The whistling sound was like the gates of hell opening. The extremely sharp sword chi even tore the white clouds in the sky into pieces. Seeing this scene, everyone looked at each other in horror. They never thought that the battle between the two of them would be so earth-shattering from the start. It was not strange for Yu Laro to have such a cultivation level, but Chu Yang had also reached such a level, to the extent that he was able to be on par with Yu Hyo, and not fall into a disadvantage at all. Such an outcome had undoubtedly shocked everyone to the point that their eyeballs almost popped out. Chu Yang, who was in the middle of the battle, only felt his blood boiling. That was an extremely strong fighting spirit, surging endlessly. This kind of surging majestic fighting spirit, especially when facing Yu Kai, and the huge pressure from the expert, made Chu Yang's heart burn fiercely. It was difficult to suppress. That was a kind of bloodthirsty fighting spirit that came from the bottom of his heart. An inexplicable impulse. It was as if the fighting spirit in his blood had suddenly exploded. The supreme power of the true spirit that he had just obtained from Yama's gorge suddenly surged and surged in his body. This power, as if without limit, aroused a strong reaction from the heaven-splitting divine technique. At the same time, it also aroused the fierce murderous spirit of the Calamity Sword. Although Chu Yang's expression remained unchanged, he could feel that he was already burning. It was a kind of fist-itching, hot-blooded emotion that yearned for a big battle. That was why he took the initiative to propose a battle with Yu Kai. But as soon as they exchanged blows, Chu Yang felt the horror of Yu Kai. Deputy Commander Mo Yuntian was indeed worthy of the title of a saint. His cultivation was really not just for show. Chu Yang could clearly feel that his strength was at least 2 levels lower than that of his opponents after the clash of swords. This was an essential difference. It was like a 4-digit number was definitely bigger than a 3-digit number. Even if it was 1,000 versus 100, it was still 1,000. Even though Chu Yang had a dantian that was endlessly transmitting power, and the power of the supreme true spirit was also agitating and surging at any time and place. However, under this sword strike, Chu Yang's body had only swayed a little, while Chu Yang himself had fiercely retreated 70 feet back. He couldn't even stand steadily. But at this moment, Chu Yang's fighting spirit was boiling. He retreated and then advanced again. Like a shadow, he launched a dense attack towards Yu Kai. His body was like a wisp of ethereal black smoke, suddenly advancing and retreating, suddenly forward and suddenly backward, changing unpredictably. Yu Kai's mouth held a trace of a sneer. His whole body remained upright and motionless. He was really as steady as a mountain. He counted the moves as he saw them, and broke them as he saw them. Chu Yang's attacks were like the waves of the sea. Each wave was higher than the previous one, and seemed to have no time to stop. But Yu Kai was like a reef that stood in the sea for hundreds of millions of years. No matter how strong the wind and waves hit, he remained unmoved, everlasting. Although Yu Kai seemed to be in a passive defensive position, in fact, he was waiting for Chu Yang to exhaust himself. As the saying goes, the first drum builds up the spirit, the second will weaken, and the third will exhaust. As long as Chu Yang's wave of tide-like attacks stagnated for a moment, he would welcome Yu Kai's fierce counterattack. Regarding this point, the two people who were in the battle were naturally well aware of it. Offense had always been the best defense. Pure defense was undoubtedly much more difficult than pure offense. Yu Laro could passively endure Chu Yang's attacks without moving and was safe and sound. But if the two exchanged positions, and Chu Yang had to endure Yu Laro's crazy attacks like a storm, Chu Yang would definitely not be able to handle it. Chu Yang's cultivation was still much lower than Yu Kai's. Therefore, Yu Kai was not in a hurry. He had a card up his sleeve, and was calm and confident. Chu Yang's attacks were absolutely impossible to persist for a long time. It was impossible no matter how long his meridians were and how vigorous his vitality was. I'd like to see how long you can last. When you can't hold on any longer, see if I don't teach you a lesson. Yu Kai was very proud of himself. His defense was not just a simple defense. Every strike he made contained the cultivation of a saint. As long as the weapons of both sides slightly touched, Chu Yang's body would shake violently due to the opponent's powerful counterattack. In such a battle atmosphere, and both sides were top-notch experts, a slight sway would reveal a fatal flaw, one that could be fatal. But Yu Kai was cautious by nature. Before thinking about victory, he had to consider defeat first. Especially after he almost suffered a loss in his previous rash counterattacks, he had long adopted the idea of fighting steadily. Anyway, he already had the chance of winning in his hands. There was no need to take risks to win. He did not ask for merit, but to not make any mistakes. With his hundreds of thousands of years of pure cultivation, he would exhaust Chu Yang to death even if he had to. But he did not know that Chu Yang was secretly proud of himself at this moment. He was full of joy. This sparring opponent was really too tactful. In terms of the actual strength of the two sides, if Yu Kai did not care and made a strong counterattack, with Chu Yang's cultivation that had not completely integrated with the supreme true spirit, he would definitely not be able to hold on for too long. Not only would Chu Yang be defeated, even the chance of retreating in one piece would be very slim. But Yu Kai was really too cautious. He did not dare to give it his all. This gave Chu Yang an extreme opportunity to make a move, consume his own cultivation to the limit, catalyze it internally and externally, and maximize the integration of the supreme true spirit. In fact, it was no wonder that Yu Kai would make such a choice. No matter what, a sage-level expert, as long as he was not a battle maniac, would make the same choice as Yu Kai throughout history. How many people could be like Chu Yang, who dared to deliberately consume his own cultivation in order to break through at the last minute? That was simply the most unwise act of courting death. After showing a few flaws in a row, seeing that Yu Kai was still biding his time, Chu Yang was completely relieved. But he became more and more presumptuous. One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. Chu Yang's body flew back like a meteor. Then, he retreated and advanced again, bringing along 10,000 fathoms of fine light. Good sword. Good move. Yu Kai shouted when he saw the situation. With a smile at the corner of his mouth, he calmly faced the attack. What harm is there in slaughtering the whole world? Chu Yang shouted again and made another fierce move. Good sword technique. A sharp wool buried deep will not change. The tribulation sword technique was displayed vividly from Chu Yang's hands like moving clouds and flowing water, but it carried a thunderous momentum that swept across the whirl. The boundless cold sword aura rushed toward Yu Kai in a perilous manner. Chapter 2173. Yu Kai resisted 8 moves in a row, but he felt more and more that his opponent's swordsmanship was marvelous and unparalleled, and the pressure was getting bigger and bigger. With every move that the opponent made, he had to defend with all his might. Even so, there were still sword energies that he missed. These sword energies that he couldn't defend against could only be resisted with his saint-level cultivation. Fortunately, Chu Yang hadn't reached the saint level yet. If Chu Yang had reached the level of a saint, even if he was at the primary level of a saint, this round of attacks alone would be enough to teach Yu Kai a lesson. But it was also because Chu Yang hadn't reached the level of a saint that this round of attacks that clearly had the upper hand didn't hurt Yu Kai's foundation. Yu Kai had been on the battlefield all his life and had seen a lot, but this was the first time he encountered such a marvelous and peerless swordsmanship. Even though he was in the middle of the battle, he couldn't help but be dazzled. His interest in this battle was getting stronger and stronger. This level of swordsmanship, I must unravel the mystery behind it. Chu Yang's cultivation is only at the peak of heavenly human level, but he can actually force my defense to be incomplete with this swordsmanship. If I can master such a peerless swordsmanship, won't I have the upper hand and win against Marshal Mu in the future? Yu Kai's eyes became more dignified. He stared at Chu Yang's hands, carefully guessing the mystery of each of Chu Yang's moves. But what he didn't know was that the tribulation swordsmanship had to be used together with the heaven-multiplying divine technique to have such an effect. Without the heaven-multiplying divine technique, even if he could learn all the stances perfectly, it would be difficult for him to unleash even 1/10,000th of the power of the move. A blade across the sky for 10,000 autumns, this road leads to the netherworld. Chu Yang shouted repeatedly, and sword light flew everywhere. On Yu Kai's side, sword light was also flying everywhere. It was just that he changed from an all-around defense to a defensive attack at the beginning because he found that Chu Yang's swordsmanship seemed to be endless. The more he fought, the greater the pressure he felt. There were already 7 to 8 crisscrossing white marks on his body. Although they didn't really cut his skin and hurt his body, he still felt pain. This situation is not good, we can't continue like this. Yu Kai's mind turned, we must find a way to contain it. The best way to restrain Chu Yang was undoubtedly to fight a fence with a fence. In terms of general martial arts principles, once one side launched a strong counterattack, the other side would have to put a part of their strength into defense. In this way, it would be impossible to launch an all-out attack. Yu Kai was also thinking of this idea. But today's battle situation had completely subverted this principle. Only then did Yu Jie increase his counterattack. On the opposite side, Chu Yang not only did not concentrate on defending, but instead attacked even more crazily. The heaven-overlapping divine technique was operating at an unprecedented super high speed. Both his dantians were operating at the same time. At the same time, it formed a fierce vortex, attracting the power of the supreme true spirit in his body, slowly drawing it out from his bones and muscles. It gradually converged into his dantian, replenishing his own consumption. This peculiar process was progressing at a snail's pace. If Yu Laro knew about this situation, he would definitely go all out to counterattack and completely kill off this process, because, in his estimation, Chu Yang's dantian should be close to exhaustion at this moment, but at this moment, it was once again filled with energy. Not only did it not show any signs of exhaustion, but the golden liquid in his dantian was gradually increasing at a considerable speed. Chu Yang's earth-shattering attack did not weaken at all. Instead, it became fiercer and fiercer. The magnificent sword light broke through the air, and actually made a rumbling sound like thunder and lightning. But in Yu Laro's eyes, this was Chu Yang at the end of his tether. He could not help but be secretly happy, and his defense became more and more stable. I'd rather hide myself completely, but exchange it for the green sky massacre frenzy. Chu Yang once again let out a hoarse roar. His body turned, and suddenly disappeared. His whole person had also turned into a brilliant sword light. Amidst the dazzling brilliance of the stars, an extremely frenzied murderous intent swept towards Yu Lai like a tidal wave. Ha ha, Mana Master Chu, are you finally at your wit's end? An arrow at the end of its flight, what's there to be afraid of? Yu Laro clearly felt the decline of the opponent's sword momentum. He could not help but laugh loudly. He felt that victory was in his hands, and the overall situation was in his hands. The two big sword moves converged, and came over mightily. Behind the sword light, Chu Yang's figure suddenly reappeared, and he shouted, not necessarily. Then, another 4 moves were brazenly launched. Big and blunt without a sharp edge, the sky wants to sink, no blade and no cold sword intent is dense. Life and death is the beginning of the sword's sharpness, only the vicissitudes of life know the silent soul. These 4 moves were a desperate sword technique that risked one's life to take another's life. The consecutive attacks caused Yu Lai to be flustered. The last strike of the sword head was hidden in the brilliant and dazzling sword light. Chu Yang, together with the sword hilt, crashed into Yu Laro's chest and abdomen. Yu Laro let out a muffled groan. His body finally could not remain still like a mountain. His whole body flew backwards, and he only felt a sharp pain between his chest and abdomen. His eyes finally revealed a strong anger. Since he had been promoted to a saint-level expert, how long had it been since he was injured? It had really been a long time. But unexpectedly, he had not expected that he would be injured by a junior who was not even a saint-level expert. This move was fierce, overbearing, and unexpected. It finally caused a super expert like Yu Laro to be injured a little. After Yu Laro's move, he retreated 100 feet. Using his hands to cover his chest and abdomen, he slowly raised his head and said in a deep voice, Chu Yang, good sword technique. On the opposite side, Chu Yang was sweating profusely. He gasped for breath and sneered, "This is not good enough. The real good sword technique is yet to come." Yu Laro said coldly, "Unfortunately, you have succeeded in angering me. Whether the sword technique is good or not is meaningless to me. Chu Yang, today, I will kill you." Chu Yang smiled faintly and leaped up. "Yu Lao, don't play with words. In the end, who will kill who, is not certain yet." Suddenly, there was a loud shout, "The world of mortals is the path of ruthlessness. Don't restrain your blade when you kill the world." A crazy sword aura actually pressed over brazenly again. This wave of attack was a large-scale indiscriminate attack. The whole world seemed to be filled with Chu Yang's sword light. From top to bottom, it was all densely packed sword mountains and sword seas. Between heaven and earth, there was only the sword. Seeing this, Yu Lao let out a long roar and flew over. With a lift of his long sword, he actually took the initiative to enter the area of sword light and sword shadows. Then, clap 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 clap. The continuous sound of collisions sounded continuously and finally concluded with a loud bang. Yu Lao, who was submerged in the sword mountains and sword seas, suddenly reappeared. His body spun and as if he was unsteady, he staggered back. On the opposite side, Chu Yang's situation seemed to be worse. His whole body spun and flew out in a sorry state. He flew out for more than 300 feet before he returned to the ground. He couldn't stand still and staggered, falling back for more than 100 feet again. On the ground, 2 deep marks were drawn by his feet. The 2 people who stopped their bodies looked up at each other at the same time. Their hearts were filled with awe. At this moment, Yu Lao finally felt a bone-chilling real crisis. On his shoulder, there was an additional bloodstain. Although it was only a superficial wound and couldn't even be considered a minor injury, Yu Lao understood another thing. The Saint Golden body that he relied on the most, which he thought was unbreakable, was no longer unbreakable in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang's sword could actually threaten the safety of his physical body. Yu Lao's heart was filled with vigilance and he couldn't calm down for a long time. But Yu Lao didn't know that the shock in Chu Yang's heart was even more unparalleled. This was the first time Chu Yang met such a powerful opponent. He used the Calamity Sword moves consecutively. If the opponent could block it, he would block it. If he couldn't, he would just use his physical body to block it. Even with the unparalleled sharpness of the Calamity Sword and his current extreme cultivation, he couldn't pierce through the opponent's body at all. It must be known that Chu Yang had been trying to break through the opponent's defense with the Calamity Sword. But previously, other than adding white marks on Yu Lao's body, even the sword aura couldn't penetrate his flesh. The firmness of the Saint Golden body couldn't even be broken through by the Calamity Sword. In the last time, he even risked his life and used all his strength, but he still could only leave a bloody mark on the opponent's shoulder. Chu Yang was actually very clear that the reason why he achieved such results was not because the Calamity Sword wasn't sharp enough, but because his own cultivation was too weak. If he could also have the cultivation of a saint, he didn't have to reach the same level as Yu Lao. He didn't even have to have the strength of a saint. As long as he had the strength of a beginner saint, he could kill Yu Lao's body like cutting vegetables. But the reality now was that his cultivation wasn't enough. There was a fundamental difference in his foundation. Chu Yang panted and thought quickly, thinking of a way to break through the enemy. If he couldn't even break through the opponent's defense, how could he win the battle? Under the continuous fierce battle, although the duration was very short, every round of battle was a full output. Although the vitality could be endless, the burden of physical exhaustion was unavoidable. Yu Lao on the other side gently breathed a sigh of relief. Previously, he was continuously suppressed by Chu Yang, and the consumption of his cultivation and spiritual power was also extremely huge. It could be said that it was several times more than Chu Yang's consumption. His nerves were always tense, and he didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless. At this moment, it was finally time for him to take a breath. But what he didn't expect was that when Yu Lao just breathed a sigh of relief, Chu Yang, who should be more tired than him, actually rushed over again. In a flash, the magnificent sword light once again crossed the distance of 400 feet and came in front of Yu Lao. Yu Lao was furious. He was obviously a small ant, But he actually dared to use such a shameless way of fighting against him. It was really intolerable. Yu Laro roared and fought back with all his strength. Chapter 2174. Another round of fierce battle started again. Chu Yang repeatedly used the 30 moves of the Tribulation Sword technique for more than 10 times. He launched an all-encompassing attack on Yu Lingshaw. Every time he used the sword technique, he would gain some new insights. Yu Lai also clearly felt that the power of Chu Yang's sword technique was slowly increasing. Although the increase wasn't very obvious, but compared to the sword technique at the beginning, the power of the sword technique now was almost like two different people. Is this bastard using me to practice his sword technique? This unimaginable thought appeared in Yu Jiao's mind. But the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Thinking of this, Yu Lai became unusually angry. Thinking of me, the deputy commander of Mo Yun Heaven Army, how can I be a puppet that you can use to practice your sword technique? Yu Lai let out a long roar, and the sword light suddenly flourished. He actually counterattacked with an unprecedented power. At this moment, Chu Yang suddenly somersaulted out and shouted, "Who's there?" Yu Lai was startled. Is there someone else nearby? Why didn't I notice? Instead, it was Chu Yang who noticed. Then, he saw Chu Yang angrily scolding, "Yuchi, I respect you as a senior and a great commander. That's why I agreed to have a fair fight with you. But I didn't expect you to arrange for your subordinates to ambush me. Late Rain, with your actions, can you still be considered a senior expert? Are you still a deputy commander of Mo Yun Heaven Army? Is this how you eat your words and go back on them?" Yu Lai said angrily, "Nonsense. When did I arrange for my subordinates to ambush you here?" Chu Yang's face was full of anger. "You still dare to not admit it? A real man dares to take responsibility for his actions and have a clear conscience. I didn't expect you to be so cowardly. You dare to do it but fear to take responsibility. What you did is done, and you still want to deny it and quibble. Do you think that everyone in the world is stupid and blind?" After saying that, his face was full of disdain. Yu Lai was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. "You're talking nonsense. There's obviously no one here. Where did the ambush come from?" "Ha ha ha," Chu Yang sneered mockingly. "Shameless person, are you still trying to cover up the truth? Do you still want me to take out evidence? Do you want to prove that you are despicable? Good, good, good." Yu Kai was a proud and arrogant person. How could she accept such an insult? He shouted, "As long as you can produce evidence, this general will kowtow to you and admit his mistake." As he spoke, he circulated his divine sense and carefully searched the void. Chu Yang took 8 steps forward. Then, he raised his head and shouted, "Heavenly King Mo Yun, you bastard who stabbed me in the back. Come out now. You're just a bunch of rats and dogs. You dare to plot against me but don't dare to come out and meet me." Yu Kai only sneered at Chu Yang. Chu Yang said furiously, "Do you think that I won't be able to find you just because you know how to conceal your divine soul?" Yu Jiaori was startled. Divine soul concealment. Could there really be someone spying on them from the sidelines? Who was it? Those who had the ability to conceal their divine soul were definitely not ordinary people. Could it be that there was really someone who would sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, intending to reap the benefits of the fishermen? He couldn't help but concentrate a little more, increasing the strength of his divine sense search. Then, he saw Chu Yang angrily take another 50 feet forward. Suddenly, he shouted, "Still not coming out." Chu Yang's wrist suddenly shook, and the calamity sword in his hand flew out. Mixed with the unparalleled power of wind and thunder, it shot toward somewhere in the sky. The sword light was bright and straight up to the sky. Yu Kai involuntarily raised his head to look. He wanted to see what was going on. However, at this moment, Chu Yang, who had just thrown the long sword into the air, suddenly flashed in the moment the long sword left his hand. Yu Kai had just raised his head when he felt a sudden darkness in front of him. He knew that something was wrong. But at this moment, it was already too late to do anything. Then, he felt a huge fist violently smashing his nose. This was really unexpected and impossible to guard against. At this moment, Yu Kai's entire mind was searching for that inexplicable ambusher. And Chu Yang had always been displaying his sword skills. Now that his sword had already left his hand, it was clear that he was already extremely angry. His only thought was that ambusher. Therefore, Yu Kai was 10,000% unprepared. This punch landed solidly on Late Rain's nose without any fuss. Yu Kai's face was suddenly smashed with a white light ripple. That was the protection of the sage's golden body. His whole body flew up from the ground. He was sent flying backward by this punch. He only felt a sharp pain on his face. Late Rain knew that he had been tricked, and was furious in his heart. Chu Yang had already caught up to him like a shadow. He punched Late Rain's eyes again, and then he went all out. His two fists brought along countless afterimages, and like a torrential downpour, they smashed onto Late Rain's face. Yu Kai's body suddenly left the ground. His spirit had just recovered when he was hit hard. For a moment, he couldn't react in time. He could only passively fly backward. White light flickered on his face, and circles of ripples were smashed out by Chu Yang. Chu Yang carried a huge momentum. Every punch was full of strength. Like a storm, it landed heavily on Yu Kai's face. On the nose. He didn't hit any other places. He only hit the eyes and nose. Yu Kai's body flew out of the mountain like a kite with a broken string. Chu Yang in front of him followed up. His fists were like meteors, and his hands were like torrential rain. While fighting, Chu Yang shouted, "Yu Kai, you despicable and insidious villain. Yu Kai, you dare to plot against me. Yu Kai, you dare to sneak attack. Yu Kai, you really lost Mo Yuntian's face. Yu Kai, you son of a bitch. Yu Kai, how can you be so despicable and shameless to this extent? Yu Kai, I really feel cold for you. Yu Kai, you despicable villain. In a fair duel, you actually used tricks to sneak attack me. Yu Kai, I have seen your so-called ability. It turns out that you are such a despicable and filthy villain." Yu Kai only felt that his heart was about to explode. Who is despicable and shameless? Who is the one who sneak attacked me? Who is the one who schemed? Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Those shady deeds are clearly done by you, Chu Yang. It's you. It's you. You were the one who used a trick to ambush me. After your ambush succeeded, you shamelessly turned the tables and pushed all the blame on me. Now, you can still speak so righteously and righteously. What's even more outrageous is that you actually said it so sullenly and indignantly. How can you be so shameless? You are simply despicable and shameless. There is no limit to how low you can be, but these words were all in Yu Kai's heart. He didn't have any chance to say it. After his whole body was smashed into the air, his feet never landed on the ground. As long as he landed, he would be able to catch his breath. Even if he had to take a few hits, he would have to get out of this embarrassing situation first. But in this short period of time, Chu Yang actually blasted out 310 punches. There was no gap at all. Chu Yang's punches carried a violent momentum. He didn't seek to injure the enemy, only to charge forward. Even if Yu Kai used the 10,000-pound hammer, he still couldn't step on the ground. He could only sullenly fly all the way back. He didn't even dare to open his mouth to forcefully convert his energy. Because, once he opened his mouth, his teeth would definitely be broken. In the current situation, he was completely relying on the strong defense of the saint's golden body to resist Chu Yang's attacks. Once he forcefully opened his mouth, the operation of the saint's golden body would be temporarily interrupted. Although he wouldn't be seriously injured in other places, his teeth would definitely be broken. That was the place where the saint's golden body couldn't fully protect. Yu Kai's current situation was in line with an old saying, "Suffer in silence. Eat in silence. You know what you're doing." He was so sullen that he wanted to go crazy. But he could only endure the beatings all the way. In the original open space, the injuries of both sides had been fully bandaged. Everyone was glaring at each other. If it wasn't for the strict orders of both sides not to fight, they would have already killed each other. If looks could kill, then everyone on both sides would have died at least 1,000 times already. All that was left was worry for the two sides that were fighting right now. On a mountain far away, vast sword energy shot into the sky and danced in the air like gods and demons were fighting. This kind of intense battle was too much for everyone to take in. Even Mo Yuntian and the others who had been full of confidence in Yu Kai couldn't help but feel nervous. They couldn't be sure. They were very familiar with Martial Yu's fighting style. They could see that the sword light that seemed to want to cut through the world was definitely not Martial Yu's sword. Since it wasn't, then it had to be Chu Yang's. If they inferred based on this, then they could come to a shocking, inconceivable, and unbelievable conclusion. Ever since the battle started, Martial Yu had been passively taking a beating. He had been at a disadvantage the entire time. He was definitely at a disadvantage. When they thought of this, everyone frowned. There was great worry on their faces. That Chu Yang's strength had reached such a terrifying level. Just as they were thinking about this, they saw the sword light in the sky suddenly dissipate. It seemed that the battle over there had stopped. Everyone, regardless of friend or foe, stood up in unison. Everyone's heart was beating rapidly. Who was the winner of this battle? Suddenly, an enormous boom sounded. Then they heard Chu Yang's furious curses. "Yu Kai, you despicable and shameless person." The voice was clear and powerful, penetrating and shaking the sky. Everyone was shocked. What was it? Why was Chu Yang so angry? Then Chu Yang's curses sounded again. "You dared to ambush me. You dared to ambush me. You dared to use underhanded tactics. You could not win against me, so you used such underhanded tactics. What kind of hero are you? You really make people laugh," everyone realized. As they had expected, the truth was like this. The second chapter is still missing one, will be completed tomorrow. Chapter 2175. Previously, when he saw that Yu Kai had been in a passive defensive state, he already felt that he wasn't Chu Yang's opponent. But he absolutely didn't expect that Yu Kai would actually use despicable means in such a fair battle. Such a person was Mo Yuntian's vice commander. For a moment, everyone looked at Mo Yuntian's people with disdain. Yu Kai's subordinates instantly blushed and fidgeted uneasily. Most of them lowered their heads. The other party's eyes were filled with disdain, sneers, and mockery. It was really difficult to face them head-on. Tan Tan laughed in a strange voice. "Ah ha ha. Vice Commander Mo Yuntian, TSK, you truly have an awesome status. You can't afford to lose. You've even resorted to crafty plots and tricks. Ha ha, so this is the fair fight that Vice Commander you had proposed. This is Mo Yuntian's strength of character. Ha ha ha. I've experienced it. I've fucking widened my horizons today." Instantly, Bai Yu Chen, Che Shu Chu and the others booed. The generals under Meng Wu Ya were even more pleased. Yu Kai has always been this kind of trash. We have seen this kind of dirty tricks many times, so we are not surprised anymore. That's right. Yu Kai is just a plate of dog meat. He can't get to the main seat. It's really Mo Yuntian's great sorrow that such a person occupies such a high position. Knowing that he can't beat the other, he used such a scheme in a fair battle. TSK as expected of Vice Commander Yu. Otherwise, how could he not be able to beat Commander Mu? With such a character, TSK his dreaming. That's right. On the opposite side, the people under Yu Kai's command all lost face. They felt deeply ashamed. They wanted to refute, but the truth was in front of them. They could not speak without conscience. They could only curse inwardly. How could Vice Commander Yu do such a thing at such a time? Could it be that Chu Yang's strength had really reached a point where he could not compete with him? To force Commander Yu to do such a despicable thing? Then, the doubts in everyone's heart were completely dispelled by the truth in front of them. Before everyone's eyes, banging sounds rang out one after another, shaking the mountains and the earth. What was that sound? Everyone looked towards the source of the sound and saw two figures entangled with each other in the distance. They floated over from the sky at an astonishing speed. It was also mixed with Chu Yang's angry and aggrieved scolding. Everyone focused their eyes, and at that moment, that scene, they couldn't help but be shocked. only to see Yu Kai fluttering backwards without any strength to fight back, while Chu Yang was madly chasing after him and beating him up. Every punch was as heavy as a mountain on Yu Kai's face. For a moment, everyone was petrified and speechless. What the fuck? This Chu Yang is actually so ferocious. He actually grabbed Yu Kai like he was beating a pig that couldn't fight back, and beat him up in such an unbridled manner. This. Everyone felt that their worldview had been completely overturned at this moment. If Chu Yang was beaten up by Yu Kai like this, perhaps everyone wouldn't be so surprised. But now, the reality was right in front of their eyes. The one who was madly swinging his fists was clearly Chu Yang, and the one who was beaten up without any strength to fight back was indeed Yu Kai. A saint. Bastard. Chu Yang's angry roar seemed to shake the heavens and the earth. It's a fair fight. You can't beat me, so it's fine if you admit defeat. I don't have to take your life, so why do I have to use such a despicable scheme? Everyone understood. It seemed that Deputy Commander, you had gone too far just now. Why would the other party be so crazy? So shameless and like a hooligan, he attacked with his fists. I already said that I don't want your life, I already said that I can let you go, but you still want to use such despicable means. It's really annoying. Chu Yang scolded. Do you still have any face? You've lived for so many years in vain. Everyone looked at each other. What did Deputy Commander Yu do to anger the heavens and the people? If Yuan Tianjie knew that you would actually do this, I'm afraid that he would be so angry that he would immediately be cuckolded. Chu Yang was filled with righteous indignation. Everyone looked at each other and was stunned. What was this saying? Yu Kai did this. What did it have to do with Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun being cuckolded? You actually sneak attacked me when you were kneeling down and begging for mercy. You simply have no bottom line. No bottom line. Chu Yang seemed to be so angry that he couldn't speak. Only his fists were getting heavier and heavier. You're a fucking piece of trash. You're a fucking piece of trash. Everyone was in an uproar. Yu Kai actually knelt down and begged for mercy before? And then sneak attacked him again. This, only to see Yu Kai's face splattered white light in all directions. She floated back unsteadily. But Chu Yang still didn't stop. He kept on scolding. You know it yourself. I really don't want to kill you. I really don't want to, you know? Yu Kai's body was still flying back like a kite with a broken string. His eyes glared at Chu Yang, and he was so angry that he wanted to die more than 100,000 times. Finally, puff. Yu Kai suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and the tip of his right foot suddenly stepped on a broken trunk of a big tree. Finally, he took a deep breath without caring about anything else. He raised his head and roared, Chu Yang, obviously, he was so angry that he couldn't speak clearly. A world-destroying aura suddenly surged out from his body, and it was Deputy Commander Yu who had burned his own life potential, desperately bursting out a defensive counterattack. Bang! Chu Yang's body floated backwards at an extremely fast speed. This round of crazy beating had finally come to an end. In this short period of time, Chu Yang had smashed a total of 1,800 punches on Yu Kai's face. After Chu Yang landed on the ground, he staggered a bit, and forcibly swallowed the blood in his throat. He stood steadily on the ground, and looked at Yu Kai on the opposite side with his hands behind his back, and said compassionately, Yu Kai, although you want to harm me, I don't want to fight to the death with you. It's enough to win or lose. If you hadn't violated my taboo, disregarded the principle of a fair battle, and used those dirty tricks, I wouldn't have taught you such a lesson. But since things have come to this, I hope you can learn from it in the future. As the saying goes, if you know your mistakes and can correct them, nothing is better. As the saying goes, the sea of bitterness is boundless, repent, and the shore is at hand. As the saying goes, repenting is more precious than gold. Although you're a few years old, you still have some time to live. Seize the remaining days, and start anew. These words were said with a strong sense of righteousness that inspired reverence and good intentions. If people who didn't know heard it, they would think that this was a savior. Others have used such dirty tricks on you, and you're still trying so hard to educate them. Really, really a noble character, really a high mountain to look up to. Yu Kai had just landed on the ground dizzily. He staggered a bit, and then he found that he was already in front of the crowd. Could it be that in front of his subordinates, he was beaten up so fiercely and without any face? Then he heard Chu Yang's words. So compassionate and sincere. So sincere in his teachings. So true in his feelings. So great in his character, so noble in his character. For a moment, the fury in his heart could no longer be suppressed, and it burst out fiercely. The kind of suffocation that almost made him crazy, and the kind of humiliation that almost made him explode, all rushed into his heart. In an instant, his heart convulsed with anger, and his liver trembled with anger. He pointed a trembling finger at Chu Yang. Just as he opened his mouth to say something, he felt something sweet in his throat. He spat out a mouthful of blood with a wah sound. Then, he spat out a dozen mouthfuls of blood. His face instantly turned as white as paper. For a moment, he almost couldn't stand. Deputy Commander, Commander Yu. What's wrong? Deputy Commander Yu, you have to take care. Your health is more important, nothing else is important. Immediately, someone flew forward to comfort him. Chu Yang stood across from him with his hands behind his back. He looked really elegant, extraordinary, and otherworldly. In reality, the two hands were constantly circulating and rubbing against each other. He sucked in a breath of cold air. Motherfucker, why are this old bastard's bones so hard? After this round of 1,800 punches, even the bones in my hands have cracked. It's so painful that I can't take it anymore. This old bastard hasn't been beaten to death, and he isn't even injured. And that damned protective divine technique actually lasted for 1,700 punches before it was broken. Such a person is only at the level of a saint. Then what about a high-level saint? Motherfucker! My hands are really in so much pain. At this point, Yu Kai finally took a breath, but he still spat out a dozen mouthfuls of blood. Firstly, it was because of the injury, and secondly, it was because of anger. Of course, the main reason was still anger. This result was reasonable. Even if Chu Yang had used the heavenly divine technique to its fullest extent, it would still be impossible for him to beat Yu Sha to death with his saint-level cultivation. Even if Chu Yang had used the heavenly divine technique to its fullest extent, and continuously hammered Yu Sha with the strongest force, it would still be impossible for him to beat Yu Sha to death. Chu Yang made a series of sneaky moves and created an opportunity. Finally, he gained the great advantage of 1,800 punches in a row. He finally shattered Yu Kai's protective holy aura. But the protective holy aura of a saint was too strong. Only the last 100 punches really hit Yu Kai's body. However, with such a high-intensity output, Yu Kai's protective divine aura was finally broken, but Chu Yang didn't have it easy either. Chapter 2176. However, Chu Yang was determined to fight with all his might. If I don't kill him, I'll be dead for sure. I must persevere. It was precisely because of this mentality that Chu Yang continued to throw punches without any regard for his life. He continued to punch until the bones of his two fists were completely broken. If he didn't stop and forced himself to fight, Yu Kai would at most be more seriously injured, but his life would definitely not be in danger. But Chu Yang's two hands might be completely crippled. In addition, Yu Kai was a saint-level expert after all. Although he was in a difficult situation at the moment, who knew if such an expert had any hidden secret methods? If he really didn't care and really damaged his own foundation to fight back, with Chu Yang's current state, as long as Yu Kai used all his strength to fight back, even if Chu Yang didn't die, he would be seriously injured. In view of this, especially in the current situation where the tribulation space was still closed and there were no heavy pills left, Chu Yang knew that he had run out of ammunition and food. How would he dare to really cripple his hands, let alone seriously injure his body? So when he saw that he couldn't kill Yu Kai even if he used more strength, and might even suffer a counterattack, Chu Yang immediately stopped. If he didn't stop now, his two hands might really be gone. Everyone around looked at him with admiration. No one thought that Chu Yang could be so fierce that he could beat the deputy commander of Mo Yuntian into such a sorry state. It was really too ferocious. too ferocious. Mo Yuntian and the others gathered around Yu Kai and called out repeatedly. They were really worried. Yu Kai still stood straight in the same place. His face was covered with a thick layer of white fog. After a long time, he suddenly roared, "Get out of my way." An abnormally powerful force suddenly erupted, causing the surrounding people to tumble backwards. The white fog above his head suddenly dissipated, revealing his face. His face was bruised, his nose was crooked to one side, even his lips were blue, and his face was full of blood. His two big panda eyes were so swollen that they narrowed into slits. He stood up straight and suddenly let out a loud roar. His face suddenly surged with a white light. The dense white light slowly lingered on his face, and the bruises on his face quickly disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. His original thin complexion was restored. The dark shadows at the corners of his eyes and his crooked nose miraculously recovered. When the dense white light completely dissipated, Yu Kai's complexion had completely returned to normal. His eyes seemed to be on fire as he stared at Chu Yang. His eyes were filled with madness as he took a step forward. He gritted his teeth and said, "Chu Yang, what a good Chu Yang. I finally get to know you today." Chu Yang smiled lightly and said, "Deputy Commander Yu, you're flattering me. Although you're not my opponent, with your cultivation, you can be considered a top figure in this heavenly imperial court. The world is so big, where can't you go? I believe that as long as you repent and turn over a new leaf, you'll have a bright future ahead of you." He clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Yu Lai expectantly, speaking with the demeanor of an elder. "Young man, do your best. I'm very optimistic about you." Yu Kai stared at him as if he was going to vomit blood. He said angrily, "Chu Yang, you despicable man, can you be more shameless, more despicable?" Chu Yang frowned and said very unhappily, "I don't like to hear you distorting black and white. Who's despicable? Who's shameless? Who's despicable? Why don't you let everyone be the judge? Justice is in people's hearts. How can right and wrong be argued?" Yu Kai roared like a mountain, "Good thief, are you saying that I'm despicable, shameless and despicable?" Chu Yang smiled faintly again and said very generously, "Look at you, why are you so anxious? How can you be so arrogant? You see, after the battle, you've been suppressed by me. You didn't counterattack at all. This is an indisputable fact, right?" Yu Kai said angrily, "So what? Go on." Chu Yang chuckled and said, "Then, I suddenly threw the sword into the sky. That's what happened, right? I'm not lying, right?" Yu Kai said angrily, "It's indeed not bad, but," Chu Yang interrupted and said, "I saw that I've been suppressing you with the sword for so long, and you didn't have the slightest strength to fight back. I didn't want to use the sword again. First, I was afraid that I would use too much force and hurt your life. Second, we agreed that it was a fair battle. I had to give you some leeway to fight back. Anyway, I can take care of you with my fists. The result was roughly what I expected. I just didn't expect that you still didn't have the strength to fight back even after I threw away the sword." Yu Kai's face turned red. "Bastard, you're just," Chu Yang interrupted, "Yu Kai, what people do, the heavens are watching. Do you dare to swear to the heavens that I didn't throw the sword into the sky and used my fists? The heavens and the earth are witnessing this battle. What are you still arguing about?" Yu Kai was so angry that he couldn't speak. Chu Yang said with a puzzled face, "Oh right, I've always been puzzled about something. Why did you look up when I threw the sword into the sky? It's just a sword. What were you looking at?" Yu Kai's anger surged like a mountain. The more anxious he was, the more he couldn't say any words to defend himself. "Young man, it's true that you have to keep your eyes and ears open during a battle, but you can't ignore the enemy in front of you." Chu Yang said earnestly, "What is the enemy?" "The enemy is a sworn enemy who can seize any flaw in you and deal a fatal blow to you." "Young man, this is a bloody lesson. Remember it well." Yu Kai had a problem since he was young, which was that he stuttered a little. Usually, it was better, but once he was anxious and angry, the more he wanted to say, the more he couldn't say anything. At this moment, he was obviously angry to the extreme. But under Chu Yang's sharp tongue, one sentence after another, Yu Kai couldn't answer directly. He was so anxious that his mouth was full of saliva, but he couldn't refute. At first glance, it seemed that he was speechless because of Chu Yang's words. There was really no difference. When you looked up, I took advantage of the moment when you exposed your flaw and punched you in the face. A duel is about not giving in on the spot and not showing mercy. You also said this sentence. I didn't do anything wrong in this matter, right? We are originally enemies. Killing on the battlefield is unscrupulous, right? Not to mention that I hit you, even if I cut you with my sword, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Chu Yang's words seemed reasonable and righteous. And every sentence occupied the place of righteousness. Every sentence was afraid that the other party wouldn't agree, and he had to ask, right? Everyone listened and nodded. Even the people on Yu Kai's side were no exception. In fact, this matter really sounded like Yu Kai was too stupid. Tan Tan held his stomach and laughed. Ah ha ha ha. I'm dying of laughter. Motherfucker, there's actually such a good thing in the world. He laughed until he wiped his tears and said, motherfucker, both sides were fighting. He just casually threw a sword, and you actually looked up while fighting. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a sword before? You're so fucking stupid. I've broadened my horizons again today. Moreover, because you looked up and got beaten up like this, you can still feel so wronged and vomit so much blood. With your fucking IQ, you can actually become the deputy commander of Mo Yuntian. I'm really fucking stupid. If it was me, with my extreme intelligence, wouldn't I become the emperor of that Mo Yuntian? Motherfucking Yuan Tianji would have to call me father. Tan Tan's words immediately gained the approval of the Dream Slayer army and Bai Yu Chen. They nodded and echoed. Who is the despicable, shameless, and despicable one? Chu Yang looked up and was proud. Yu Kai. Everyone said in unison. Who is the stupid one? Yu Kai. Who's the one who's stupid? Yu Kai. Who is the stupid one? Yu Kai, Yu Kai, Yu Kai, it's Yu Kai. There's no one else. Everyone shouted, and their laughter shook the sky. On the opposite side, Yu Kai's subordinates were all pale. Motherfucker, Deputy Commander, you did this himself. Motherfucker, we can't even find a reason to refute. Yu Kai used his life potential to recover from his injuries while cursing. On the other side, Chu Yang's hands were also trembling. He couldn't hold his sword at all, and could only talk to delay time. Although the two of them had the same idea, Chu Yang's words were too infuriating. Others might think that he was righteous, but Yu Kai was so angry that he almost went mad. Listening to him distorting the facts so much, but her own mouth was not good enough. She couldn't win the argument. Late Rain was so angry that her internal organs were smoking. She simply didn't care about the injury. More and more white foam appeared at the corner of Yu Kai's mouth. He was stunned and couldn't speak. He roared and pounced forward fiercely, shouting, "Let everyone see who's the one who's not the other's opponent." Since he couldn't explain it clearly, he would explain it with facts. Chu Yang laughed heartily. The outcome has been decided, and you still want to fight. You should know that I was merciful last time. I didn't use my sword against you, but my fist. If I used my sword, would you still be alive? You're so despicable and shameless. I didn't kill you, but you still want to court death. Come, 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 I'll fulfill your wish. Everyone felt that this was reasonable. The other party didn't use his sword, and you were already swollen. Now that you want to use your sword, isn't that courting death? They all came forward and pulled Yu Kai. Marshal Yu, since the outcome has been decided, let him live. These words were very appropriate, and greatly took care of Yu Kai's face. But Yu Kai almost vomited blood and said, "Why should I let him live? I must kill him." Everyone despised him in their hearts. You're already swollen, and you still won't let him go. Chu Yang is right, you're really too shameless. Chapter 2177. With a sudden roar, Yu Long finally broke free from the crowd and flew over. At this moment, he had obviously been completely blinded by anger. At this moment, apart from the thought of killing Chu Yang, there was no other thought in Yu Late's mind. Chu Yang beat him up like this and made him lose face in front of his enemies and subordinates. Yu Long had never suffered such a big loss in his life. Moreover, it was the kind of loss that he couldn't say anything about. If he didn't take revenge for this, he would really live up to the saying, "I'm not a man." Chu Yang looked at Yu Long, who was gritting his teeth and rushing over with a ferocious expression. His eyes revealed a strange playful look. Yu Long had lost his mind now. Yu Long had lost his ability to think normally now. And this was the best result that Chu Yang wanted. Otherwise, why would he have to spend so much effort? First, he didn't hesitate to use his vitality to cast the Calamity Sword art 10 times in a row. Then, he completely suppressed Yu Xian, and wantonly used schemes and tricks to make Yu Xian embarrassed. What was the point of wasting his breath to play monkey tricks? Yu Long's real cultivation was much higher than Chu Yang's. If it was a fair battle, both sides would go all out, and the final result would be Chu Yang's death. If it wasn't for the continuous use of tricks to make Yu Long's cultivation drop a little, this battle would be impossible to fight. How could Chu Yang not know that he was twisting words and forcing logic? How could he not know that he was distorting the truth? The so-called reason was simply untenable. As long as everyone thought about it carefully, they would be able to see through the whole story. The people in front of him were just confused by a series of so-called truths. They deeply despised Yu Long's character in their hearts. That was why they all slandered Yu Long. I believe that with a little more time, there may be no need for Yu Long to explain himself. Everyone on both sides would be able to see through the whole story. However, as long as Yu Long lost his mind now, it was enough. Previously, the only purpose was to agitate Yu Long enough to make his mind chaotic and lose his composure. If not, how could he have a chance to win? If Yu Long was still clear-headed, how could he fight with him? What kind of fair battle is this? It's simply a battle to the death where the strong bully the weak. Chu Yang had spouted a lot of nonsense before. Perhaps, there was only one sentence that was completely true. That was, on the battlefield, when two sides were facing off against each other, it was a matter of course. Chu Yang sneered and shouted, "You Kai, I've already spared you, but you still want to court your own death. Since you want to die so much, I might as well fulfill your wish. Hand over your life." This sentence was undoubtedly adding fuel to the fire. Yu Lai was angered by him to the point that his qi and blood surged even more, and he almost spat out another mouthful of blood. Although Late Rain couldn't win against Chu Yang in words, her heart was as clear as snow. Chu Yang is a shameless guy. His mouth is invincible. I'm definitely not his opponent. But why should I argue with him? Let's go over and fight. I won't give him a chance to play tricks again. If he still wants to use his fists to hit me, it's impossible. Also, his sword has already been thrown to the sky. Right now, this guy is basically unarmed. Although I'm also unarmed, but how can Chu Yang's cultivation be compared to mine? In this fight, I have full confidence in winning. In front of an absolute gap in strength, any tricks that can't be put on the table are meaningless. I'll return the favor the way I was beaten just now. I'll use this pair of fists to beat this shameless guy into meat pace. Late Rain rushed up like a mad tiger, waving her fists to hit. The moment she punched out, her heart was filled with tyrannical pleasure, as well as the excitement of revenge. Chu Yang on the opposite side shouted, "Unrepentant person, don't blame me for being impolite." He actually punched out the same way. Late Rain gritted her teeth, and added 30% more strength to her fists. Her eyes were filled with madness, as if she had already seen Chu Yang's fists being crippled and smashed by her fists. However, just as the two fists were about to collide, there was a sudden burst of light, and the sword aura flourish. A sword suddenly appeared on top of Chu Yang's straight fist without any warning. It was a sword that shone with boundless light and was incomparably sharp. Chu Yang said with a smile, "One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms." This move this time was different from the one he used in the battle with Late Rain. It was the ultimate change of the Tribulation Sword technique, which was the ultimate version. One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. 8 moves merged into one and exploded to the limit. Late Rain thought that the opponent's sword had already been thrown away, or at least not taken back for the time being. How did she know that it would appear in Chu Yang's hand again? How could every single one of these divine weapons be like this? But the sword in Chu Yang's hand was clearly the sword that she fought with just now. When on earth did he find it? This is too illogical, right? Late Rain mustered all her strength to attack, but she also felt the tyrannical threat from Chu Yang's sword at the moment when their attacks were about to collide. For a moment, her consciousness was blazing as she roared, "Despicable." She actually tried her best to retreat. Although his golden body of the sage had been completely replenished, he had done so by stimulating his own life potential. Otherwise, he would not have been able to recover so quickly. Moreover, after this round of exhaustion, he would not be able to recover if he did not meditate and recuperate for 8 to 10 years when he returned. If he were to be broken by Chu Yang again at this moment, even if Late Rain's cultivation was not destroyed, it would be hard to say if he could recover in this lifetime, even to the extent that with the intuition of a martial artist towards danger, he could clearly and truly feel that Chu Yang's current move was more than 10 times more powerful than the previous moves. So Late Rain could only choose to retreat. But he was originally charging forward with all his strength, and now he suddenly changed to retreat. In such a situation where he was in a dilemma, where he was lost due to anger, and where he lost his rationality, there was finally a little bit of delay and flaw that inevitably appear. Although the flaw was small, it was enough for Chu Yang, who had been deliberately searching for the flaw. The boundless cold light that Chu Yang had unleashed shot onto Late Rain's body at the same time. However, at the last moment, Late Rain's pair of fists finally swung out. It collided head-on with Chu Yang's sword tip. Puff 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 puff. With a series of collision sounds, the two people who were fighting fiercely separated again. Late Rain's tall and sturdy body fell back like a kite with a broken string, while Chu Yang's body on the opposite side spun and staggered back rapidly. On the ground, 4 deep marks appeared at the same time. Those were marks that were plowed out by the feet of the two people. The robe on Late Rain's body instantly turned into a beggar's outfit. Countless tiny bloodlines spurted out from his body bit by bit. The body protection technique and the golden body that he had hurriedly activated finally could not withstand Chu Yang's ultimate sword. There were at least 100 wounds on his body. Although without exception, they were all superficial wounds, and some were even shallow scratches on the skin, he was still injured after all. Chu Yang's invincible and all-pervasive sword aura had made Late Rain suffer a lot this time. Although the bones and internal organs of his body did not suffer the most direct and frontal damage, they had suffered countless shocks. With a wah sound, Late Rain spat out a mouthful of blood again, and his face quickly turned grey. Chu Yang on the opposite side also spat out a mouthful of blood with a wah sound. His body swayed, and he spat out 2 more mouthfuls of blood in succession. His face was as pale as a sheet. The result of the head-on collision this time was that both sides suffered. And the result this time was something that even Chu Yang did not expect. In Chu Yang's calculation, Late Rain's continuous schemes seemed to have been almost defeated by him. Previously, even the golden body of the sage was shattered. Although he forcefully used his life potential to repair it, his real combat power should have dropped by at least 1 level. Coupled with the internal injuries, the continuous suffocation, and the anger that made him delirious, with the current cultivation of Late Rain, even the strongest could only be at the level of a beginner sage, right? But even under such circumstances, he could still cause such a result of both sides suffering? How deep do you think Late Rain's foundation is? Even more, this was not over yet. After Late Rain spat out a mouthful of blood, he did not even pant for a moment. He roared furiously and jumped up, chasing towards Chu Yang. A series of fierce attacks like a storm suddenly unfolded in mid-air. Although Late Rain's mouth had been bleeding during this process, and his injuries continued to increase at every moment, at this moment, he did not care at all as if he had gone crazy. He only had one thought in mind: to attack desperately. On the opposite side, Chu Yang roared, as if he was not to be outdone. He propped up his body and leaped into the air. When he opened his mouth, blood also gushed out continuously. Even his 7 orifices were spurting out blood continuously. He, who was seriously injured, also rushed up in a head-on collision. He collided with Late Rain's body in mid-air. The sword light soared into the sky, and the sword energy overflowed. With a boom, under this collision, a bottomless canyon was directly shaken out on the ground. The two people once again fought in the air, and no one was willing to retreat. The two people on both sides of the battle looked ferocious, and they did not care about their own safety. Like two mad bulls, they were crushing each other. Collision. And everyone watching the battle below could not help but stare blankly. Everyone felt goosebumps all over their body. Everyone had lived for so long, at least hundreds of years, and at most hundreds of thousands of years. What kind of battle scene had they not seen before? But it was really the first time in their lives to see such a fierce battle between these two people. Crazy. Chapter 2178. In mid-air, a strange situation appeared. Yukai's left hand grabbed Chu Yang's right shoulder fiercely, and Chu Yang grabbed Yukai with the same hand. Both of them actually had the same idea. Don't you fucking think of leaving. They actually fixed each other in mid-air just like that. Yukai's other hand punched Chu Yang crazily. Every punch made Chu Yang spit out a mouthful of blood. The sound of bones breaking continued to ring out in a densely packed manner. And the calamity sword in Chu Yang's other hand also stabbed Yukai's body without any regard for his life. From beginning to end, Chu Yang stubbornly only stabbed calamity sword into the same place on Yukai's body. Every time he stabbed, Yukai's body would emit a burst of white light, and he would spit out a mouthful of blood. These two people were attacking each other as if they didn't care about their lives. There was only one thought in their mind: you're dead. Bang bang bang. Puff 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 puff. Everyone didn't know how many times they had heard such a sound before, but only this time, everyone's heart couldn't help but twitch violently with every sound. Their minds were shaken. The two people's bodies kept rising as they fought each other. Then, they gradually descended as they fought each other. In this process, Yukai already didn't know how many punches he had thrown, and Chu Yang also didn't know how many swords he had used. Every sword seemed to be slaughtering the world, as if it had become a habit. Finally, when they were about 100 feet from the ground, there was a sudden puff sound in the air. It was like a cone piercing a balloon. Everyone fixed their eyes and looked over, only to see Chu Yang's face was full of ruthlessness. This sword actually pierced deeply through the protective white light of the saint's golden body, and deeply stabbed into Yukai's body. All of a sudden, the protective white light exploded and scattered. The sword tip of Calamity Sword, with a bright bloody light, revealed half of it from Yukai's back. It was shining brightly. Then, with a whoosh, it was retracted again, and from another position, the sword tip of Calamity Sword emerged again. Yu Jiao let out a long and mournful scream. Her entire body was trembling violently. Suddenly, she exerted strength in the air and the two of them flew up into the sky again. At the same time, Yukai's fist also ruthlessly smashed into Chu Yang's face. Chu Yang's entire head was smashed to one side, and his cervical vertebra made a catcher sound. However, Chu Yang's hand sword still didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation, and continuously went in and out of Yukai's body 3 times. Blood slowly fell from the sky, and landed on the ground. It gradually gathered into a pool, and no one could tell whether it was Chu Yang's blood or Yu Lei's blood. Both of them were bleeding profusely. Their mouths were full of thick bloody foam. Their heads, faces, and bodies were covered in blood. Some of it was their own, and some of it was their opponent's. At this moment, the two of them were already on the verge of death. However, the battle intent and ruthlessness in their eyes were not inferior to the other. Everyone's lips were tightly shut as they looked at the two people fighting. Not a single word was uttered. At this moment, everyone's hearts were filled with respect. Everyone on Yukai's side regarded killing Chu Yang as their top priority. However, at this moment, seeing that Chu Yang could actually fight so ferociously, they couldn't help but feel respect in their hearts. Such an enemy could be said to be a terrifying existence that was like a nightmare in the heart of any enemy. However, it was also so respectable. As for Chu Yang's side, Tan Tan and the others looked at Yukai's battle at this moment, but a sense of respect also spontaneously rose from the bottom of their hearts. No matter what kind of person this person was, or what kind of character he had, just by looking at this battle alone, Yu Kai was worthy of the title of Deputy Commander Mo Yuntian. No matter whether he was forced to be like this, or for some other reason, as long as a man could fight and fight without regard for his life, then no matter who this man was, he was still worthy of respect. Now, the battle between these two people was no longer purely for victory or defeat, life or death, but for persistence. It depended on who could persevere more than the opponent. Even if it was a difference of one sword and one fist, the one who could persevere would be the winner. Both of them were now on the verge of collapse. The only belief that could support them was, I must see the other person fall first. This was a battle between men. It was already unrelated to life and death, and also unrelated to grievances and hatred. Such a way of fighting could only be described in one word: men. On Yu Kai's body, there were already no less than 100 transparent sword holes. On Chu Yang's body, there were also large areas of collapse. It was obvious that his bones were completely shattered. With such injuries, no matter which side it was, they should have died 10 or even 100 times. However, under such an atmosphere, both of them chose not to make a move on each other's only movable arm. I'll leave you to fight. Let's see who can't persevere first. Boom. Both of them finally fell to the ground at the same time. However, they were still holding on to each other. They stared at each other fiercely without blinking. Yu Kai gritted his teeth and punched out again. He slowly hit Chu Yang's body. His fist no longer had any strength. However, when it touched Chu Yang's body, the force that might not even be able to crush an ant usually made Chu Yang groan in pain. Chu Yang slowly raised the calamity sword in his hand again and pierced into Yu Kai's chest at a surprisingly slow frequency. It was as if he was doing a set of super slow movements. Unfortunately, he had clearly used up all his remaining strength, but he still couldn't pierce through Yu Kai's chest. He could only slowly pull out his sword, obviously intending to change a place to strike. At the same time, Yu Kai also slowly retracted his fist like an old man in his twilight years. Both of their movements were so soft and weak. However, their eyes were burning crazily, like a raging fire. Finally, when Yu Kai's fist was retracted halfway, it hung down softly and couldn't be lifted again. Chu Yang slowly pulled his sword out of Yu Kai's chest. His wrist shook inexplicably and the calamity sword almost fell to the ground. However, he gritted his teeth and roared silently. His whole body trembled as he lifted his sword again. Yu Kai looked at the sword in Chu Yang's hand with furious eyes. His eyes were burning crazily. Chu Yang's sword moved forward inch by inch. During this process, the two people's eyes were fixed on each other. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Chu Yang's blood-stained face. His lips moved slightly, and he said in a weak but clear voice, "I won." At the same time, the sword in his hand slowly pierced into Yu Kai's chest for the last time. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Yu Kai couldn't move at this moment. However, Chu Yang could still move and use his sword. Therefore, Chu Yang had won this battle. There was a roar in the sky. A clear voice sounded faintly in the cloudless sky. Chu Yang, Yu Kai, Demon Emperor Heaven has witnessed the 7,754th battle between saint cultivators. Chu Yang, who hasn't reached the saint level, wins. Life and death, victory and defeat, leave it to fate. The bet is over. The promise of a monarch is witnessed by the heavens. The oath must be fulfilled and cannot be violated. The oath division finally made a verdict at this moment. Chu Yang won. Chu Yang, who hasn't reached the saint level, wins. The divine light in Yu Kai's eyes was still burning like a flame. He stared at Chu Yang. After a long time, the light in his eyes finally dimmed. He said as if he was moaning, "I've lost." His hand, which was originally tightly gripping Chu Yang's hand, suddenly loosened. His tall and sturdy body also suddenly swayed. Then, he fell backwards like a jade pillar toppling over a mountain of gold. Marshal Yu. Marshal Yu, Yu Kai's subordinates rushed up like lightning and supported Yu Kai's falling body. Yu Kai only said 2 words weakly, "Go back." Then he completely fainted. Chu Yang was still standing upright. He looked at Yukai's subordinates who were carrying Yukai. They glared at him with unconcealable hatred and left silently. But Chu Yang didn't move at all. Tan Tan was anxiously asking Chula, girl, do you still have the elixirs that senior brother gave you? There should be at least 1 or 2, right? Chula pursed her lips. Tan Tan was so anxious that he stomped his feet. No more. Yours is gone too. Why did you use all of them? Chula burst into tears. I didn't notice. Yours is gone too. Tan Tan was dumbfounded when he heard that. 2 streams of tears flowed down his cheeks just like that. There was no doubt that Chu Yang had indeed shown his prowess in this battle. But he had also used up all of his life and all of his potential. In the end, every punch and every sword was squeezing out the remaining fire of his life to fight. No matter whether it was Chu Yang or Yukai, no matter who won or lost, it was very difficult for the 2 of them to survive. Unless Yukai had the precious secret elixirs that Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun, Yuan Tianji, had given her, she would definitely die. And it was the same for Chu Yang. If he didn't have the heavy elixirs, Chu Yang would definitely die too. But at this time, the heavy elixirs that Chu Yang had given to Chula and Tan Tan when he ascended to Tian Qiu had long been used up. What was worse was that Chu Yang, who was a big producer of heavy elixirs, obviously didn't have any himself. If he still had heavy elixirs, this battle wouldn't have been so miserable. The 2 of them had seen Chu Yang taking elixirs while fighting more than once. It was almost the same for every battle. They carefully went over to take a look, only to see Chu Yang staring blankly ahead. His pupils were already gradually dilating. Big brother, senior brother, Chula and Tan Tan shouted at the same time, hoping to call back Chu Yang's consciousness. Chu Yang didn't disappoint the 2 of them. He was more or less conscious. He muttered, they left. Chapter 2179. He's gone, he's gone. We're all safe now. Everyone was sobbing silently. Together with the 800 soldiers of the Dream Slayer army, they all knelt on the ground. For a group of people who used to be their enemies, this man who risked his life to save them. Everyone knelt on the ground piously, tears streaming down their faces. Are they gone? Are they all gone? Chu Yang asked in a daze. He looked as if he had been relieved of a burden. Then, his eyes, which were originally in a daze, suddenly shone with an indescribable sense of pride. I won the battle with Yukai, who was at the peak of the saint level. He, Chu Yang sneered and said intermittently, we're all men, and we only have 1 life. You dared to risk your life. Do you think I don't dare to? Ha 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 ha. With a hoarse laugh, he suddenly fell straight backwards. He fell into the arms of Chula, whose face was already full of tears. My ribs are all broken. My sternum is broken, my skull is also broken, my neck is broken, my spine is broken. The broken bones have already been turned into thousands of fragments. Everyone checked Chu Yang's injuries and was speechless. No one could imagine how Chu Yang had managed to fight with such a tragic injury. Even if an ordinary person had 1% of Chu Yang's injuries, they would not be able to get up. But not only could Chu Yang fight, he could even persevere all the way until his opponent admitted defeat. He only collapsed after a long time. What kind of tenacity was this? What kind of shocking willpower was this? Looking at Chu Yang, who had fallen into a coma, everyone fell into a period of speechlessness. What an iron-boned hero. But the problem they had to face now was that Chu Yang's injuries were too serious. It was so serious that no one dared to move his body. They were afraid that he would fall apart if they moved him. This worry was not excessive or exaggerated. A certain king of Hell's bones were broken and broken. If they were not careful, he would not be able to regain his human form. But now, there was no medicine to save him. Everyone was at a loss of what to do as they watched Chu Yang's breathing become weaker and weaker while he was unconscious. I have some medicine here, but I'm not sure if it'll work, Yarrow Ningning said. What kind of medicine? Tan Tan was overjoyed. Cut the crap. Take it out quickly. Chula urged her sternly. The little lass was already out of her wits, and she had to grab onto any straw that could save her life. Yarrow Ningning did not mind at all and said, "This medicine was given to me by my Empress Mother. She said that it can save my life at a critical moment. I just don't know if it will be useful for such a serious injury. In any case, it's already like this. Using it should be better than not using it." As he spoke, he took out a purple jade bottle from his bosom. He carefully opened it and brought it close to Chu Yang's mouth. Just like that, a silvery liquid dripped out of the bottle. As soon as it came out of the bottle, the liquid emitted a dazzling light like the stars in the sky. The world was suddenly filled with endless fragrant spiritual energy. As if it had a life of its own, it automatically entered Chu Yang's mouth. Then, without any warning, Chu Yang's body suddenly shone with the brightest colors of the stars. It was as if all the stars in the sky had gathered on Chu Yang's body at this moment, blooming with endless light. "It's the constellation soul-stealing liquid," Uncle Hu exclaimed. He turned to look at Yarrow Ningning, as if he could not believe the scene in front of him. Yarrow Ningning rolled his eyes and said, "What's the big deal about this? Is it worth making a fuss over?" Uncle Hu and Uncle Ma both stomped their feet and sighed. "What's the big deal about this? Is it worth making a fuss over? What's the big deal about this? It's worth making a fuss over." This was a true, and insane prodigal. If the two uncles knew that this thing was given out by a certain someone, the two of them would definitely stop it. Even if they had to break off relations with Tan Tan and the others, they would still stop it. It was not that the two uncles were too stingy. It was really because this thing was really too precious, too rare, too. The constellation soul-stealing liquid was undoubtedly a unique treasure in the world. As long as one took this constellation soul-stealing liquid, no matter how serious the injury was, one could always hang on to one's last breath and not die. It could wait indefinitely for the medicine that the injured needed. This medicinal effect was not only suitable for ordinary people. Even if the descendants of Emperor Yi suffered injuries that could never be healed, they could also use the constellation soul-stealing liquid to maintain their vitality. Therefore, although the constellation soul-stealing liquid could not have an immediate effect, it was definitely a first-rate life-saving medicine in the Heaven Imperial Court. Once this medicine was taken, as long as there was no external interference, even if the injured wanted to die, they would not die. At that time, the Demon Empress worked hard and even took the huge risk of almost starting a war with the other Sky Emperors to get this bottle. This guy actually gave it away without batting an eyelid. If this matter was known by Her Majesty the Demon Empress, she would definitely immediately spank this unfilial person. After taking the constellation soul-stealing liquid, the effect was indeed amazing. Chu Yang's complexion instantly looked much better, and the essence energy in his body also started to circulate on its own. Although he was still in an unconscious state, the essence energy in his body already started to heal on its own. This was undoubtedly an extremely good sign. In Chu Yang's dantian that no one could see, those little golden people were all dispirited at this moment, almost on the verge of collapse. However, as the constellation soul-stealing liquid quietly entered their bodies, those little people suddenly became like people who had starved for 30,000 years and suddenly saw nectar. Without any explanation, they all started to crazily absorb it. As they absorbed, the power of the Supreme True Spirit in Chu Yang's body also started to gather again, gathering towards his dantian once again. Slowly, the golden liquid from before slowly appeared in the previously completely dried up dantian, and the spirits of the few little people also gradually became excited again. Along with wave after wave of breathing, traces of golden mist came out of their mouths and noses again, flowing through the meridians to all parts of Chu Yang's body. And wherever this golden stream of air passed, the severely damaged meridians started to recover bit by bit. Even those broken and crushed bones were glued together by an inexplicable mucus, and returned to their original places. Although this recovery process was slow, it was disorderly and well organized. Although Chu Yang was still unconscious at this moment, his complexion was getting better and better. After a day of not moving, a rare trace of blood actually appeared on his face that was as pale as paper. Until now, Chu Le and Tan Tan could finally relax a little. During this period of time, the two of them had been by Chu Yang's side, not going anywhere, taking care of him without blinking. It was as if Tan Tan had drained himself of all his energy. He continuously poured his energy into Chu Yang's body. After his cultivation was exhausted, Chu Le took over. Then, Tan Tan rested for a while before taking over. Meng Wu Ya's injuries were also very serious, and he was also in a state of unconsciousness, but at least his life was not in danger. Currently, the Dream Slayer army had nowhere to go, so they could only temporarily march with Chu Yang and the others. Not to mention anything else, Chu Yang, their savior, was still unconscious. Even if the Dream Slayer army was thick-skinned, they would still be embarrassed to just leave without saying anything. The group of people that Chu Yang and the others initially had more than 30 people, but in the blink of an eye, it had become close to 1,000 people today. Although they were marching majestically, their marching speed was as slow as a snail's. It wasn't until the afternoon of the second day that they had traveled less than 100 miles. They set up camp at the foot of a mountain, and prepared to rest. Yu Kai's injuries were about the same as Chu Yang's, so he was definitely unable to chase after them. Even if they didn't consider Yu Kai's character, just based on their injuries, everyone was still safe. Even if Yu Kai had the elixirs that Yuan Tianji had given him, it was impossible for it to reach the level of constellation soul-stealing liquid, so his condition was definitely not better than Chu Yang's. Without Yu Kai's presence, they had to worry about the attack of the tribulation spirit, and it was impossible for it to counterattack. Although Yu Hai's character isn't that good, but the words she said and the promises she made can still be counted as a promise worth 1,000 gold. An officer of the Dream Slayer army said, since he promised to retreat, under normal circumstances, he definitely wouldn't go back on his words. After setting up camp, they first settled the two heavily injured Chu Yang and Meng Wu Ya. Then, everyone began to look around for food. If they had nothing to do, they set up a protective formation outside, and everyone sat down to cultivate and recover their own state. After checking on Chu Yang's injuries, Yarrow Ningning returned to his small tent. In the tent, besides the two elders, there was another person at the moment. He was full of a clear aura, and was standing solemnly, waiting for someone's return. When he saw Yarrow Ningning come in, he immediately stood up. Greetings, Grand Elder. You may dispense with the formalities. Yarrow Ningning waved his hand and sat lazily on the chair. I actually didn't ask you to come here for anything important. I just want to ask you about the real situation of the battle between my big brother Chu Yang and Yu Kai. After all, you are the representative of the Heavenly Patrol and judge the outcome. As the other party, you must have seen the whole process. This person was the master of the Heavenly Oath Division. After all, Yu Kai had made a bet with someone of Chu Yang's level. Of course, it wasn't something that ordinary people could witness, but the master of the Oath Division was destined to be the only exception. The four people's conversation didn't deliberately lower the volume of their voices, so what they were saying now, although they were in Yarrow Ningning's tent, everyone could hear it. At this moment, when they heard Yarrow Ningning's words, everyone's ears suddenly pricked up. This topic, everyone was too interested in. End of update. Sigh, I'm going to attend the annual meeting on the 13th again. These few days, I've been crazily saving manuscripts, but I'm afraid I'll still owe it by then. Let me give my brothers and sisters a heads up in advance. If I really owe it, don't scold me. If I don't owe it, then reward me. Hee hee. Chapter 2180. Everyone was really curious about the situation of the battle between Chu Yang and Yu Kai on that mountain, and how it led to such a result. Chu Yang's strength was clearly much weaker than Yu Kai's, but when the master of the Oaths Department heard Yarrow Ningning's words, his expression immediately became very strange. He said with a faint smile, "What exactly do you want to know, Your Highness?" Yarrow Ningning said with great interest, "I want to know everything, no matter how big or small. You just have to start from the beginning and tell me everything you know." Well, the process of the matter is like this. On that day when the oath was established, Chu Yang's true cultivation was lower than his opponent's by 3 levels in the way of Heaven's test. In other words, Chu Yang was only at the peak of the heavenly being realm, while Yu Kai was at the peak of the sage realm. The master of the Demon Emperor's Heavenly Oaths Department spoke slowly but clearly. Under normal circumstances, There's no need for such an oath in this duel at all. There's simply no comparison between the two. Yu Kai, who's at the peak of the saint level, should be able to easily kill Chu Yang with a casual palm strike. However, the Heavenly Way has unexpectedly acknowledged the existence of this bet. This has naturally aroused the great interest of our entire Oaths department. And the facts also proved that Chu Yang really had endless potential. He won a battle that was absolutely impossible to win in the end. He actually used different means to weaken Yu Kai's cultivation time and time again in the battle with him, so that the two of them finally stood in a situation of almost equal confrontation. The master of the Oaths department began to describe the entire process of Chu Yang's battle. He didn't even miss a single detail. He described in detail every word that Chu Yang had said, Yu Shou's reaction after each of his words, the extended meaning of each of Chu Yang's words, and Yu Shou's subsequent psychological conjectures. He didn't miss a single detail. He explained everything clearly one by one. It could be said that the current commentator, even Yu Kai herself, would not have thought of so many things. In the decisive battle, it's natural to pay attention to the words and deeds of the other party, and this is also the time when one's spirit is highly concentrated. But because of this, Yu Kai suffered a big loss in the end. Every word that Chu Yang says hides a special purpose. He is gradually leading Yu Kai's thinking to produce subtle changes with his words. Every subsequent sentence would push the effect of the previous sentence infinitely to the highest level. So, Chu Yang would be able to control Yu Gang's emotions from the very beginning. Especially when he calls out the names of his sword moves again and again, and every move is so fierce. Since Yuchi was able to reach her current position, she is definitely a martial arts fanatic. How could she not be interested? And Delayed Rain's tragedy began when Chu Yang shouted out the name of the sword move for the first time. From then on, things got out of hand. Just like that, he used this kind of progressive method to distort black and white to plot against Yu Kai, causing Yu Kai's cultivation to continuously decline due to her injuries. In the end, she even lost her rationality due to anger. Hearing this, Uncle Hu couldn't help but ask in confusion, "This isn't right, right? You should know that it was a fair fight between the two of them. Isn't Chu Yang interfering with the battle situation by doing this? And his method is a bit too despicable. How can such behavior be done by a real man? Why didn't your Oaths department stop it? Stop it. Elder Hu, I'm afraid your words are unfair." Ha ha. The head of the Oaths department looked at Uncle Hu with some inexplicable meaning, and smiled faintly. "Elder Hu, don't misunderstand. I'm afraid you have misunderstood something. Ha ha, speaking of which, Elder Hu still has a strong Jianghu aura. You are very persistent in your chivalrous spirit." The meaning of this sentence was quite profound. Moreover, he didn't call Uncle Hu by his official position. Instead, he called him Elder Hu just like the old master, and even changed his surname. The meaning of this hidden meaning was very obvious. Uncle Hu's old face turned red, and he said angrily, "How am I unfair? Where did I misunderstand? Did I say something wrong?" Elder Hu, the oath between the two of them was a battle of victory and defeat. They even said a few words about life and death. In other words, this is actually a battle of life and death. The head of the Oaths department chuckled. What Chu Yang did was still a battle in essence, and not a simple scolding. Do you understand? Or I can say it more clearly. Using a saber to kill is killing, but using a sentence to kill is not killing, right? Using a saber to fight is fighting, but using a sentence or a few words to provoke the enemy's anger and disturb the enemy's fighting heart to achieve one's desired goal. This method may not be desirable, but in the end, it is still a battle. When two people are fighting on the battlefield, not to mention a sentence, even a look or an expression from the opponent can be a factor that disturbs and affects the battle situation. A sentence is also a battle. It is also a weapon. In a battle, the winner will live, and the loser will die. How can Chu Yang's actions be despicable? In a battle between enemies in this world, there is nothing they won't do. Each of them is desperately looking for a chance to survive on the road of death. This matter is only about life and death. What does it have to do with morality? Battlefield. The final victor is the winner. But Uncle, who was a little stunned and didn't know what to do. If everyone were truly reasonable and moral, would there still be a war of weapons in this world? Why would there still be gratitude, grudges, hatred, and bloodshed? As for the talk of a fair fight, haha, this fight itself is extremely unfair. Chu Yang is 3 levels lower than his opponent at the start of the fight. How can it be fair? The master of the oaths department looked at Uncle, who with some mockery. According to you, since it's a fair fight, then everyone should fight openly. If you can't beat me, you'll die. In that case, what else is there to fight in this battle? Everyone, just show your cultivation. Chu Yang is seriously no match for you. Wouldn't it be easier to just slit your own throat? Why are you still fighting? Your strength is weak to begin with. But you don't allow others to use tricks against you. Do you want Chu Yang to close his eyes and wait for death with this fair fight? Do you think so? The master of the oaths department's words made Uncle, whose face and ears turn red. One's cultivation of vitality is one's strength, and so is one's attainment in weapons. But there's actually another most important strength. This strength is often the key that can affect the battle situation the most. That's the wisdom of the human mind. This is also a part of strength. And it's also the most important component of strength. Yu Kai's cultivation is 3 levels higher than his opponent's, and he has cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years longer than his opponents. In the end, he was still defeated by his opponent, and both sides suffered great losses. Just a few words can make him so angry that he's delirious. What's wrong with losing? The master of the oaths department smiled faintly. But this faint smile almost made Uncle who feel ashamed. Yes, just now, he only heard about Chu Yang's various despicable means, but he didn't think about the gap between the two's true strength. Just as he said, if Chu Yang didn't do this, what were the chances of Chu Yang winning? That wasn't even half of it, it was almost negligible. There was no need to fight this battle at all. He just needed to wait for death. Sigh. Uncle Ma let out a long sigh. But at the end of this battle, the bravery displayed by these two people was truly moving. Even now, thinking about that kind of battle still makes my heart tremble and my mind sway. The master of the oaths department smiled again. Elder Ma, you're wrong again. Wrong? What's wrong? Yes, it's wrong in the word bravery. From the beginning to the end, I only saw Chu Yang's bravery. How can I see Yu Kai's bravery? At best, he's just mad with anger and has lost all reason. Under such circumstances, can it be called bravery? Chu Yang, on the other hand, fought with his opponent so crazily in a situation where his mind is extremely clear. That's real bravery. Speaking of which, it's not that Chu Yang didn't have other ways to restrain Yu Kai, but in the end, he still accompanied him to such a decisive battle. This is the true respect for this fight, and also for Yu Kai. So, after Yu Kai was defeated, he didn't say anything. He immediately gave the order to retreat, because he understood it himself. Chu Yang didn't have to do this, but he still did it. When you're weak, you can think of a way to equalize. But when you're evenly matched, I won't take advantage of you. Let's fight with our own abilities. Now, Mo Yuntian's army has already left Lone Bamboo City and is beginning to retreat to Mo Yuntian. This is also the only thing about Yu Kai that people can agree with. That is, he's a man of his words. And, in the end, he didn't have any resentment. He must have thought it through. The words of the master of the oaths department set the final tone for this battle. At the same time, it also revealed the mystery in everyone's hearts. Whether it was Yarrow Ningning or the people listening outside, they were all enlightened. Thinking of the hardships of Chu Yang's battle, everyone sighed in their hearts. From being 3 levels lower than the enemy, to using all means to equalize the battle. Finally, under the situation of being evenly matched, he abandoned the power of wisdom and fought to the death with the enemy, risking his life. And won the battle in the end. This process was really too difficult. And, everyone also remembered a few other sentences. Everyone felt that they had benefited a lot. Using sabers and swords is killing, and it's a battle. But, isn't a sentence killing a person also killing a person? Since it's a battle, then anything in the battle is a weapon. Sabers and swords are weapons. Isn't a sentence or a smile also a weapon? After writing this chapter, I hesitated for a long time before posting it. Because in my own opinion, this is an unnecessary chapter. Since the battle is over, what's there to explain? I thought everyone understood, but the truth is that many people don't. When the battle chapter came out, there was a wave of abuse. Book reviews were criticizing, Tiebar was criticizing, Weibo was criticizing, and there were even people directly criticizing on QQ. Everyone thought that Chu Yang should have fought Yukai head-on, fight fair and square. Can't stand it. I might as well explain this chapter. Chapter 2181. Although one's cultivation of vital energy is one's strength, and so is one's attainments in the sword and saber. However, there is another most important strength. This strength is often the key that can affect the outcome of a battle. That is the wisdom of a person's thoughts. This is also a part of strength. And it is the most important component of strength. Everyone seemed to have understood something as they chewed on these words. After answering Yarrow Ningning's question, the master of the Demon Emperor's Heavenly Oaths Department left immediately. This big shot was also a person of high status and power. The Oaths Department was a special department that was independent of the official system of the Demon Emperor's Heaven. In the entire Demon Emperor's Heaven, other than the Demon Empress herself, there were not many who could order this big shot around. This time, it was Yarrow Ningning, the unruly Grand Master, who asked personally. If it was someone else who wanted to inquire, not to mention whether they could find out, they might be accused of spying on the secrets of the Heavenly Oaths. It was just that before he left, he unexpectedly heard that Yarrow Ningning had given the constellation soul-stealing liquid to Chu Yang for consumption. His eyes actually lit up and he said something unexpected. Worth it. Too worth it. As the only person who had watched the entire battle, it was believed that no one knew the depth of Chu Yang's potential better than him. A person who was only at the peak of celestial being level was able to defeat a sage. What a terrifying existence he was. There was no doubt that it was an absolutely shocking surprise. If one were to say that Chu Yang's battle record was still a little vague and not very specific, then it could be compared to an example that was easier to understand. The difference in cultivation between Chu Yang and Yu Kai was roughly equivalent to a first-grade supreme martial artist in the Chongqian continent suddenly exploding and killing Ning Tianya after a round of fierce battle. There was no doubt that the difference in strength was really that big. That was why everyone who heard this result was so shocked. No matter what methods Chu Yang used in the battle, whether they were despicable, shameless, or despicable, it was undeniable that this was war. This was a place where all kinds of plots and schemes were used normally. It was still the same saying. If one didn't use it, was one waiting to die? But there was one thing that couldn't be denied. Other than Chu Yang, looking at the battle records of all the people from ancient times to now, in the world, there was no one at the peak of celestial being who could defeat a saint. What future did such a person have? Was there even a need to ask? If a person like Chu Yang were to die, all the experts in the world would be glad that there was one less terrifying person who could threaten them. But if he were to live, the impact would be even greater. At the very least, if you were to befriend such a person, and even if you were indebted to him in the past, it would be equivalent to having a permanent protective talisman. This person was willing to brave dangers alone for the sake of his subordinates. For the sake of his brothers, he was willing to risk his life. For the sake of his friends, he was willing to risk his life. For the sake of a person he liked, even if it was Meng Wu Ya who was once his enemy, he was willing to gamble and fight to the death. Once this person reached the level of a sage, who in the world would dare to touch his friends? He believed that once he moved, he would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. Yarrow Ningning's investment in such a person was really worth it. As the saying goes, only by being willing to part with something can one obtain it. Otherwise, how could he be the sole heir to the throne of the Demon Emperor Heaven? He was too insightful. At this moment, the master of the Oath Department had a little reverence for His Highness Yarrow Ningning. It seemed that those rumors in the past were either smoke, self-humiliation, or the jealous slander of some people with ulterior motives. How could such an insightful and bold His Highness be as unbearable as the rumors? The master of the Oath Department had left too quickly. His thoughts were completely overshadowed by his own imagination. Yarrow Ningning did not know, nor did he think that the master of the Oath Department would think like this. To be honest, when he took out the Constellation soul-capturing liquid, he did not have the slightest intention of investing. It was completely because he found Tan Tan pleasing to the eye, wanted to make friends, and was unwilling to let his friend die. That was all. The reason why Yarrow Ningning and Tan Tan could become friends was not only because of chance and coincidence, but also because of a very important similarity. Both of them had a pure heart that was ignorant of worldly affairs. Therefore, when these two idiots met, they were like tortoises and mung beans, and became idiots together. No one in the world could explain the two words fate and law clearly. Yu Kai had already led Mo Yuntian's men to withdraw by now. Once this piece of news was confirmed, everyone was instantly relieved. Not only Meng Wu Ya's Dream Slayer army, but also by Yu Chen and the others led by Chu Yang, all felt that a big stone had been removed from their hearts. No matter what Yu Kai would say after returning, the pressure from Mo Yuntian's side was completely gone for the time being. And this result, in the end, was not all because of Chu Yang's desperate battle. Everyone was well aware of this point. If it were not for Chu Yang, how could they have escaped from the previous 10,000 miles of pursuit? If it were not for Chu Yang's terrifying advancement along the way, how could they have the qualifications to negotiate with Yu Kai face to face? The long pursuit of more than 180,000 miles, with danger at every moment and death at every step, was all because of Chu Yang alone, looking for a trace of possibility in the impossible, and looking for a trace of hope in the land of death. Just like that, they rushed over. Recalling the hardships along the way, everyone felt as if they had had a bizarre and absurd nightmare. Even now, when they recalled the experience of that day, they often broke out in cold sweat and felt waves of lingering fear. Did he really come over just like that? Could it really come to an end for the time being? Everyone relaxed. Everyone had a surreal feeling. Some even wanted to cry. They really didn't know how they had come this far. If Chu Yang wasn't here to stabilize everyone's confidence, they probably wouldn't even need to be captured. They would have collapsed long ago, right? Meng Wu Ya finally woke up in the evening, which made everyone in the Dream Slayer army happy. After hearing about Chu Yang's matter, Meng Wu Ya was speechless for a long time. He did not say anything about his plans for the future, and only let out a long sigh. From today onwards, they would become vagabonds who couldn't return to their homes and would wander around the world. Yu Kai returned in defeat this time. It would be strange if she did not put all the blame on Meng Wu Ya when she returned. That day, he and the Dream Slayer army set foot in the Eastern Royal Heavens in the name of arresting rebels. Now, he and his group had become rebels. The world was unpredictable, and the world was unpredictable. How could one know what would happen in the future? Right now, he could only take one step at a time. After Meng Wu Ya woke up, regardless of whether it was his expression or his expression, it was as if he had aged a few thousand years in an instant. His originally smooth face was now filled with wrinkles almost overnight. His hair, which was originally as black as ink, had turned a lot more white overnight. Seeing Meng Wu Ya's change, everyone sighed. They knew how he felt, but no one tried to console him. It was not that no one wanted to, but they were in no position to do so. They also lacked the words to console him. They really did not know how to console him. Meng Wu Ya knew that he had been loyal to Mo Yuntian all his life. He had been loyal to Mo Yuntian through life and death. However, at the last moment, he was framed and accused of being a rebel because of a groundless accusation. From then on, the creed that he had believed in all his life had collapsed. The goal that he had fought for all his life had suddenly turned into nothingness. He had become an enemy. Who could accept this? On the afternoon of the third day, a group of people was driving a carriage. They walked leisurely on the road. All the injured were sitting in the carriage. However, only two people needed to lie down, Chu Yang and Meng Wu Ya. Their journey was much more relaxed. They didn't have to worry about being attacked by enemies. Compared to the previous situation where they were in a state of panic and fear, the current situation was as carefree as heaven. However, everyone was very worried about Chu Yang's injuries. They really could not laugh. Since Chu Yang was injured, he had been in a coma. Although he had accidentally obtained the constellation soul-capturing liquid to save his life and stabilize his injuries, Chu Le and Tan Tan Yi took care of him tirelessly. Yarrow Ningning and the others also came to visit him once in a while. They were all speechless. The injury this time was really too serious. Although the constellation soul-stealing liquid had a miraculous effect, it could save one's life without any worries. However, it was still lacking a few heavy pills that could restore one's soul and extend one's life. When it was time for lunch, Chu Le was frowning. Her face was full of worry. After these few days, she had become a lot more haggard. This big brother of mine is really... Chu Le grumbled, so many heavy pills have been distributed. He didn't even keep any for himself. Now, it's great that he's in a coma. It's obvious that he can be cured with just one pill. Tan Tan also sighed. Don't you know his temper? Doesn't he share all the good things with everyone? Have you ever seen him enjoy anything alone? What's the use of complaining now? The problem now is how to find some suitable heavenly treasures so that my senior brother can wake up quickly. Chu Le frowned. Who doesn't understand this logic? But Yarrow Ningning and Tan Tan have been looking for heavenly treasures like dead dogs for the past 2 days. It's useless. This is his territory. He has tried his best to find them, but it's useless. No matter how much we want to, we can't do anything. Yarrow Ningning's dissatisfied voice came over. Hey, Sister Le, when did your handsome brother Ningning become so tired like a dead dog? Beauty, you have to have some conscience when you speak. I'm always full of energy and vigor. Chu Le curled her lips in disdain. Who's the one who needs someone to massage his legs every day? And he keeps complaining about being tired. Yarrow Ningning was stunned. Chapter 2182. These few people had already become very familiar with each other in the past few days. They didn't have any taboos when it came to joking. They dared to say anything. Tan Tan said in an eccentric manner, I say, who are you? You're following behind that little sister by every day. You're like a shadow. Are you tired or not? Yarrow Ningning's face turned red. What do you know, my fair and virtuous lady? Tan Tan clicked his tongue and said, why don't I know? It's you who doesn't know. It's fine if she has a little bit of interest in you. Unfortunately, she doesn't have any interest in you. You're clearly hot-headed. Yet, it's still so hot. TSK, your skin is really thick. Looking at the whole world, other than my senior martial brother, you're the only one with such a thick skin. In these few days, although Bai Shixian had been following Yarrow Ningning around all the time, the little girl's goal was very, very clear. She wanted to find the cultivation inheritance of the Wind Fox clan. With a certain woman like Guy, how could she not make use of it? Yarrow Ningning naturally patted his chest and agreed. But the problem was that the thing that the little girl needed was of a very high level. It was currently in the hands of the Demon Empress. Even if the Demon Empress agreed, they could only take it out when they arrived. And Bai Shixian, this little girl, was obviously ignorant of worldly affairs. So, she wouldn't act without seeing the rabbit. Who would believe you now? Anyone with the title of Tai really didn't have much credibility, so, Yarrow Ningning was very melancholy these few days. He was really worried. As long as he was with Bai Shixian, he could not say more than a few words, and the topic would turn to the Windfox inheritance. If he wanted to talk about something like romance, or tell a joke, this little girl would have a completely ignorant and adorable look on her face. She was indeed adorable, but... Speaking of that matter... Ha ha ha, it really made me laugh to death. Yarrow Ningning said. Yes, it's really funny. Brother Ning Ning, do you really have that inheritance you mentioned before? Really? Bai Shixian said. Speaking of that guy is really interesting. Ha ha. That's what happened. Yarrow Ningning said. Ian, it's really interesting. Brother Ning Ning, can you describe to me the specifics of the inheritance? Bai Shixian asked. There's also that matter. I really went through a lot of trouble. Yarrow Ningning said. Ian, it was really hard. Brother Ning Ning, what about the inheritance? Bai Shixian said. After a few exchanges, Yarrow Ningning lost all her strength and was defeated. This was the case almost every time they talked. She had already complained to Tan Tan more than once. Elder brother, tell me. Do you have a saying like it's really hard to get through untold hardships? Yarrow Ningning had a helpless look on her face. This girl's way of thinking is completely different from a normal woman's. Everyone else should be laughing until they can't breathe, but she's just blinking her big, innocent eyes and asking about the inheritance very innocently. Tan Tan and Chu Le were disdainful of this. You call those stories stories? You have the nerve to tell jokes. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about your eloquence. It's really not worth mentioning. Besides, have you ever seen a person who hasn't even laughed when he tells a joke? You haven't even started to tell the truth and you're already laughing yourself to death. The point of laughter is really are you doing performance art or telling jokes? Moreover, Bai Shixian had been following Mo Qingwu for a long time. So, I reckon that she had heard all those so-called jokes and stories from Chu Yang. So, I reckon that her ears would have grown calluses from listening to them for a long time. Most of them have been repeated, but you're still telling them with relish. The little girl didn't fall out with you probably because she's kind-hearted. She can't bear to see that you're tired from telling them. Taking 20,000 steps back, what you've said compared to Chu Yang's eloquence and experience, to put it in a less pleasant way, it's simply a pile of shit. Who would be interested in listening? Who would be interested in listening to it? To think that you think it's very interesting. You're still in high spirits. Not to mention the little girl, even the two of us can't bear to listen to it. Occasionally, when we listen to it, we have the mentality of it's really interesting to see Yarrow Ningning embarrassed. Brother Tan, you're saying that this is really strange. Yarrow Ningning looked miserable. Why is it strange? Tan Tan rolled his eyes and chewed on the stalk of grass with a bored look on his face. Why do you think it's so difficult for me to pick up a girl? Yarrow Ningning looked dejected and melancholy. I'm fucking weird. I have the family background, the character, the looks, the martial arts, the status, the figure, the elegance, and the temperament. How can I, wretch, before he could finish, Chu Le and Tan Tan were already vomiting so much that they were in a mess. If you want to be narcissistic, you can be shameless. If you want to be thick-skinned, you can be thick-skinned. If you want to be... Chu Le continued. Yarrow Ningning's face instantly turned bitter. I say, sister, you don't have to hit me like this. No matter what, I'm still a grand member of the Heaven Imperial Court. Chu Le's face turned cold. Let's not talk about anything else. Just based on the fact that you're a grand member, the little girl definitely won't like you. Think about it yourself. Are there any good people in the Heaven Imperial Court? Yarrow Ningning's face turned black. It seems that there really aren't any good people. No, I'm a good person. Le was amused. She chuckled and said, You're a good person. You're a good person. You're still categorizing those who aren't good people as yourself. You're not that, you're that. Yarrow Ningning's face turned even darker. I'm really that. Why didn't I think of that? I'm really that, Tan Tan said seriously, which was rare for him. Yarrow Ningning, I'm telling you seriously. You can't do this. You have to do it that way. Yarrow Ningning was immediately energized. Big brother, quickly give me some advice. You're experienced and experienced. I'm counting on you. Please. Tan Tan raised his head and chuckled. He was very proud. Of course, of course. It's as easy as flipping my hand. Chu Le looked sideways and said, Oh, Big Brother Tan is so experienced in certain things. It seems that you have a lot of experience. When I see Sister Dan Feng later, I'll definitely have a good talk with her. No wonder she's so dead set on following you. It turns out that you're so experienced. I don't know if you've hooked up with hundreds of girls. His face was even more bitter than a bitter gourd. He bowed to Chu-Le with his hands clasped in front of him. Grandma. I'll call you Grandma in the future. My poor old bones really can't stand the torment. Please open your eyes. Great expert, treat me as that, and let me go. Yarrow Ningning's eyes widened. Big Brother Tan, didn't you say that you're the head of the family? Whatever you say is the law. Sister-in-law has never dared to reply. What's wrong with you? He hadn't even finished speaking when Tan Tan covered his mouth. You idiot. You deserve to be hacked to death. Are those fucking words that we brothers say when we're together? But, isn't your sister-in-law's best friend here now? How can you say such words so casually? Do you want to fucking kill me? You idiot, I've enlightened you in vain. Why can't you even understand a little bit? It's over. It's completely over. Tan Tan's face was like that of an old society. He sighed deeply. When Yarrow Ningning heard this, she still persistently asked, You haven't taught me what to do. You, Tan Tan fiercely said, What to do? It's very simple. From now on, walk around naked in broad daylight. Especially, walk around in front of Bai Shixian. Use your specialty and maverick ways to move her. It'll definitely work. Besides this, don't eat when you're eating. You'll eat shit in front of her. I believe that she'll definitely fall in love with you. This is the secret to picking up girls that I'll teach you. Tan Tan shouted hysterically. He stood up, flicked his sleeves and left. You fucking exposed my secret in front of Chu-Le, Xie Danfeng's best friend. You're making me look like I'll never see the sun again. You actually want me to teach you how to pick up girls? How did you figure it out? You're fucking crazy. Tan Tan had already left. Yarrow Ningning stared innocently. She was at a loss. She really didn't understand. Which sentence of hers had made Big Brother Tan angry? This, stripping and running around naked, doesn't seem like a good idea. Yarrow Ningning thought hard. She said to Chu-Le, as for eating shit, it's a bit too difficult. This is too hardcore. Would Bai Shixian really like it? Le, your relationship is quite good. Do you like it? Chu-Le was originally out of breath from laughing at the farce in front of her. When she heard this, she stood up and stomped on Yarrow Ningning. She said angrily, You're the one who likes it. She turned around and left angrily. Yarrow Ningning scratched her head and muttered, You don't like it? I don't like it either. Not far away, Uncle Hu and Uncle Ma looked up at the sky. It was as if there were so many things worth seeing in the sky that they actually looked up and didn't move. Their Adam's apple bobbed up and down. It seemed like they were doing something. Hey, what's going on? Chu-Le had just entered Chu Yang's carriage when she screamed loudly. Hearing this, everyone immediately rushed over to check. Right now, nothing was more important than the situation in front of a certain king of hell. In the carriage, Chu Yang was lying down quietly as before. His face was full of tranquility. However, his body was continuously emitting layer after layer of mystical white light. This dense white light turned out to be the extremely pure spiritual energy of the world. It was like layers upon layers of a dense silk net covering Chu Yang's body continuously. It seemed as if it wanted to cover Chu Yang completely. Everyone looked at this shocking scene with their eyes wide open. They really couldn't understand what was going on. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.